Welcome back, legends. This is HP Fiction. Here we explore powerful Harry Potter what-if stories. What if Hermione's magic chose Harry Potter as her destined partner on the Hogwarts Express? If you enjoy epic magical videos, subscribe to HP Fiction. Now, let the story begin. Chapter 1, Magic's Choice. The train whistled through the English countryside like a great scarlet serpent, its steam trailing white ribbons against a September sky that couldn't decide between blue and grey. Harry Potter pressed his forehead against the cold glass of the compartment window, watching hedgerows blur into smears of green and brown. His reflection stared back at him, a thin face with a lightning-shaped scar just visible beneath the fringe he'd never learned to tame, glasses that had been taped together more times than he could count, and eyes that held the particular shade of exhaustion that came from 11 years of being unwanted. The compartment door slid open. Harry flinched, his shoulders drawing up in a gesture so automatic it had become part of his posture. He'd learned early that unexpected arrivals usually meant trouble, Uncle Vernon's bellowing, Dudley's fist, or one of the neighbors coming to complain about the freak boy who lived at number 4. But the girl who stood in the doorway wasn't shouting. She wasn't holding a cricket bat or threatening to call the police. She was just looking at him. "Sorry," she said, her voice carrying the sort of crisp urgency that suggested she'd been running. "Have you seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost one, and I've been checking every compartment." Harry blinked. "A toad? Trevor. He's Neville's. He's always escaping. Honestly, you'd think after the 4th time Neville would charm his enclosure properly, but," she stopped, seeming to notice for the first time the crowded state of the compartment. "Oh. Are these seats taken? Everywhere else is full." There were 3 other boys in the compartment, already deep in their own conversation about something called Quidditch. Harry had been sitting alone, too nervous to interrupt them, too unsure of his place in this new world to claim space that didn't belong to him. The girl's question hung in the air, and Harry realized she was looking directly at him, waiting for an answer he wasn't qualified to give. He said intelligently. "I don't think so." She nodded once, decisive, and slid the door shut behind her. Her trunk followed her, and Harry noticed it was moving entirely on its own, hovering a few inches above the floor like a well-trained dog. His eyes widened, but she seemed to take this for granted, settling onto the seat opposite him with the efficient grace of someone who always knew exactly where she was supposed to be. "I'm Hermione Granger," she announced, tucking a strand of bushy brown hair behind her ear. The gesture revealed teeth that were slightly too large for her face, but she didn't seem self-conscious about them. "I've just been going through all the textbooks and I've memorized most of them already, though I expect there will be practical applications that require more hands-on learning." "Are you a first year as well?" "Harry," he managed. "Harry Potter." Her eyes widened. "The Harry Potter? I've read all about you, of course. Hogwarts, a history has an entire chapter on the incidents surrounding your disappearance from the wizarding world, though I suppose disappearance isn't quite accurate, since you were just living with muggles, but the Dumbledore's exact wording was." "Hermione," Harry interrupted, his voice coming out more strained than he'd intended. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but I don't know anything. I grew up with muggles. I only found out I was a wizard a few weeks ago. Everything you're saying," he gestured vaguely at the compartment, at the train, at the entire impossible universe that had crashed into his life like a bludger through a window. "I don't know any of it." She stopped mid-sentence. Her mouth still slightly open, and Harry braced himself for the familiar disappointment that followed whenever he revealed his ignorance. He'd seen it on the faces of teachers, classmates, the Dursleys' visitors, that particular tightening around the eyes that meant they'd expected something and found less. Instead, Hermione's expression softened. Her eyes, brown, he noticed, the warm shade of autumn leaves, held something that looked almost like understanding. "That must be so strange," she said quietly. "Finding out you belong to an entire world you never knew existed. I thought I had it difficult, being muggle-born and having to explain everything to my parents. But you," she shook her head. "You didn't even know it was there." Harry felt something crack open in his chest, a small fissure in the wall he'd built around himself. "It's been a lot," he admitted. "There was this giant man, Hagrid, he broke down the door to this hut I was staying in, and he told me I was a wizard, and I thought he was joking, but then he gave me a cake and," he stopped, aware that he was babbling. "Sorry. I'm not making sense." "No," Hermione said quickly. "No, you're making perfect sense. I've read about the Muggle upbringing of magical children, and the shock of integration, and," she reached into her robe pocket and pulled out a worn copy of Hogwarts, a history. "I can lend you this, if you like. It covers everything from the founding to the modern era." "Well, modern as of 50 years ago, but still." "That would be brilliant," Harry said, and he meant it with an intensity that surprised him. The realization that someone was offering him knowledge instead of withholding it, help instead of mockery, felt like taking his first full breath after years of suffocating. Hermione smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that transformed her features. She handed him the book, and as his fingers brushed against the worn cover, he noticed something odd. The leather binding felt warm beneath his touch. Almost uncomfortably hot, and for just a moment, he could have sworn he felt a pulse. A heartbeat, throbbing through the book's spine, synchronizing with his own. He pulled his hand back sharply. What was? The book? Hermione looked at him strangely. Is something wrong? Nothing. Harry shook his head, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something had just happened. Something significant. The air in the compartment felt different now, charged with an electricity that seemed to crackle between them. He looked at Hermione, and for a second, he could have sworn he saw a faint golden light shimmering around her edges, like heat haze on a summer road. Then it was gone, and she was just a girl again, slightly too earnest, with a tooth that overlapped its neighbor, and the world made sense once more. I should probably find that toad, Hermione said, though she made no move to get up. Neville was quite upset. His grandmother sent it with him, and he's afraid she'll be cross if it's lost before term even starts. I can help you look, Harry offered, surprising himself. He wasn't usually the sort of person who volunteered for things. Volunteering meant drawing attention, and drawing attention meant getting hurt. But something about Hermione's earnest determination made him want to help. Would you? She brightened. That would be wonderful. We can split the train, I'll go forward, you go back, and we'll meet in the... The train lurched violently. Harry was thrown against the window, his glasses sliding askew. Hermione grabbed the overhead luggage rack to steady herself, her wand, when had she gotten her wand out, already in her hand, her eyes wide and alert. What was that? Harry asked, pushing his glasses back into place. I don't, Hermione started, but she stopped, her face going pale. Harry, look at the window. He turned. The glass that had shown nothing but rolling hills and distant farmhouses now reflected something else entirely. Dark shapes were pressing against the glass from the outside, their forms insubstantial as smoke but somehow wrong, twisting the light around them like oil on water. Are those, Harry started. Death Eaters, Hermione breathed, and her voice was so quiet he almost didn't hear it. But that can't be. They're supposed to be gone. They're supposed to have disbanded after you-know-who. She stopped, swallowing hard. I've read about them. The Dementors were bad, but Death Eaters were worse. They were his followers. The dark shapes pressed harder against the glass, and Harry felt something cold creep into the compartment. It wasn't just temperature, it was emotion, a creeping despair that seeped into his bones and whispered that nothing mattered, that he was worthless, that everyone he'd ever loved had been right to leave him. Harry. Hermione's voice cut through the fog. Harry, stay with me. He blinked. The world swam back into focus, and he realized he was on the floor, his hands pressed against his ears, his body curled into the protective ball he'd learned in the cupboard under the stairs. Hermione was kneeling beside him, her hand on his shoulder, and her touch felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Can you hear me? She asked. We need to leave. We need to find the others. The others? Harry's voice came out cracked and weak. The Death Eaters are attacking the train. I saw them, she gestured at the window, where the dark shapes had multiplied. I need to get you to safety. The prefects, the teachers, someone must be able to fight them off. Harry's body refused to cooperate. His limbs felt like lead, his mind sluggish with the residue of that terrible cold. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't hold him. Harry. Hermione's voice was fierce now, urgent. I can't carry you. You have to. The compartment door burst open. 3 figures stood in the doorway, their robes black as pitch, their faces hidden behind silver masks. The one in front raised a wand, its tip glowing with a sickly green light. Potter, the figure hissed, and Harry's blood went cold. We thought we'd find you here. The Dark Lord sends his regards. Hermione moved before Harry could process what was happening. She stepped between him and the Death Eaters, her wand raised, her face a mask of determination. Protego, she shouted, and a shimmering barrier erupted between them and the intruders. The Death Eater laughed, a harsh, grating sound. A first-year's shield charm. How adorable. You think that will stop us? No, Hermione said calmly. But this might. She waved her wand in a complicated pattern, and the air between them shimmered. Harry felt something surge through him, a current of power that seemed to originate from somewhere deep in his chest, somewhere he hadn't known existed. It connected him to Hermione, a golden thread that pulsed with light. The Death Eater's spell, a jet of sickly green, slammed into the shield and shattered. What? The Death Eater started, but Hermione was already moving again, her wand tracing patterns that seemed to glow with their own internal light. The golden thread between them thickened, and Harry felt himself being pulled to his feet, his limbs moving in perfect synchronization with hers. Harry, she said, and her voice was different now, deeper, more resonant, as if something ancient was speaking through her. The bond is waking. I need you to trust me. I don't understand, he said, but his body was already responding, moving in ways he didn't consciously choose. Just trust me, she repeated. Expecto Patronum. The spell burst from her wand, but it wasn't a Patronus, not the silvery, formless shield Harry had read about. This was something else entirely. A stag made of pure gold exploded from her wand, its antlers branching like a tree of light, and it charged at the Death Eaters with a fury that seemed almost sentient. The Death Eaters screamed as the stag slammed into them, throwing them back against the corridor walls. Their masks shattered, revealing faces twisted in terror and pain. Go! Hermione shouted, grabbing Harry's hand. Now! They ran. The corridor stretched before them, endless and twisting, and Harry had the strangest sensation that the train itself was rearranging itself to aid their escape. Doors that had been locked swung open as they approached, passageways that should have been dead ends revealed new routes. How are you doing this? Harry gasped, his lungs burning. I'm not. Hermione's face was flushed, her eyes bright with something that might have been fear or exhilaration. The train it's responding to something. I can feel it, Harry. There's power running through everything, and it's all connected to. She stopped so abruptly that Harry nearly crashed into her. They were in a compartment he didn't recognize, its walls lined with bookshelves and its floor covered in scattered papers. In the center of the room, a beautiful woman with flowing silver hair was hunched over a crystal ball, her fingers tracing patterns on its surface. Professor Trelawney? Hermione said uncertainly. The woman looked up, and Harry saw that her eyes were clouded, milky white. She couldn't see them, shouldn't have been able to see them, but her gaze fixed on them with uncanny precision. You've woken it, she said, her voice carrying a strange sing-song quality. The bond that hasn't been seen for centuries. Merlin's lineage, the ancient covenant, she broke off, her hands trembling. I saw this in the tea leaves. I saw it in the stars. The destined one and the one who would complete her, two halves of a single whole. Hermione, Harry said quietly, I think she's mental. No, Hermione said slowly, I think she's exactly right. She turned to face him, and Harry saw something in her eyes that made his breath catch. There was a golden glow in their depths, the same shimmer he'd seen at the edge of his vision when their hands first touched. Harry, do you feel it? That warmth in your chest. The way your magic is responding to mine. Harry wanted to deny it. He wanted to say that he didn't know what she was talking about, that he felt perfectly normal, that the thrumming energy building in his limbs was just the adrenaline of the chase. But he couldn't lie to her. Not to Hermione, who had stepped between him and Death Eaters, who had pulled him up when he'd fallen, who had looked at him with something like recognition before she'd known his name. "Yes," he admitted. "What is it?" "Destiny," Trelawney said, and her voice seemed to come from far away. "The oldest magic, the most powerful. A bond that hasn't been seen since the founders themselves." She convulsed, her body arching back, and when she spoke again, her voice was deep, echoing, as if multiple people were speaking through her. "The one who was chosen and the one who chooses, the magic will recognize itself, even when the witches and wizards do not. The bond will form when they first meet, and the power will manifest only when they stand together against the darkness." The crystal ball exploded, showering them in fragments of glass. Hermione threw herself in front of Harry, shielding him with her body, and the shards seemed to bounce off an invisible barrier around them. "The prophecy," Hermione breathed. "It's about us." "Impossible," Harry said. I'm nobody. I'm just a boy who lived in a cupboard. I don't have any great destiny." The golden stag that Hermione had summoned appeared in the doorway, its form flickering but still solid. It nudged Harry's hand with its nose, and Harry felt a jolt of warmth shoot through him. The bond, he realized. Whatever this bond was, it was connected to his magic too. His magic, which had been dormant for so long, was finally waking. "The Death Eaters will come again," Hermione said urgently. "We have to get to the other students, we have to warn them." "Hermione." Harry grabbed her arm. "Slow down. Talk to me. What is this? What's happening to us?" She looked at him, and for a moment, he saw fear in her eyes, genuine terror at the unknown. Then it was gone, replaced by the same determination she'd shown when she'd stepped between him and the Death Eaters. "I don't know," she admitted. "But the magic in the train is responding to us. To the bond. If we can find the source of that response, we might be able to use it. To fight back." Harry looked at the stag, still waiting patiently in the doorway. It was beautiful, impossibly so, and he felt the weight of years of loneliness lifting off his shoulders. He wasn't alone anymore. Whatever this bond was, whatever destiny the crystal ball had predicted, he and Hermione were in it together. "Let's go," he said. The train had changed. Harry noticed it as they made their way through the corridors. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint golden light, the air itself thick with energy. Hermione's hand was still clasped in his, and the golden thread between them had grown stronger, brighter, pulsing in time with their heartbeats. "Harry, look!" Hermione pointed ahead. At the end of the corridor, a group of students were huddled together, their wands out, their faces pale. The Death Eaters were advancing on them, dark magic crackling from their wands. "Get down!" Harry shouted, surprising himself. He raised his hand. He didn't have a wand, he'd left it with his luggage, but he didn't need one. Power surged through him, golden and warm, and he felt Hermione's magic join with his. Together, they released a wave of energy that slammed into the Death Eaters like a physical force. The dark wizards were thrown backwards, crashing into the walls of the train, their masks shattering against the wood. "Who, what?" one of the students stammered. "Later." Hermione shouted. "We need to get everyone to safety. The train is." The train lurched again, harder this time, and Harry heard a sound like ripping metal. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness broken only by the golden glow emanating from Harry and Hermione's joined hands. "Everyone stay together." Harry called out. "Hold on to the person next to you." The darkness pressed in around them, but Harry felt the bond strengthening, golden threads reaching out from him and Hermione to touch the other students. He felt their fear, their confusion, but he also felt their courage, their determination to survive. "The train is being pulled into another dimension," Hermione said quietly. "I can feel it. The Death Eaters are trying to take us somewhere the rest of the world can't reach." "We can't let them succeed," Harry said. "What can we do?" Hermione was silent for a moment. Then she said, "We can use the bond." The power we're generating, it's more than just magic. It's the very essence of what the founders intended when they created this school. We can use it to pull the train back, to break the Death Eater's hold. How? Harry demanded. I don't even know how to do a simple spell. Trust me, Hermione said. Close your eyes. Harry did. He felt Hermione's hand tighten in his, felt the golden thread pulsing between them, and he let himself sink into the connection. His magic rose to meet hers, and together, they became something more than two witches and wizards. They became a single being of pure light, their thoughts intertwined, their power unified. The train, Harry thought, and he felt Hermione's agreement. We have to bring it back. Together, they reached out with their combined magic. The golden thread expanded, enveloping the entire train, touching every compartment, every seat, every terrified student. They felt the darkness retreating, felt the train shudder back into reality. The lights flickered back on. Harry opened his eyes to find himself standing in the middle of a corridor full of bewildered students. The Death Eaters were gone, vanished back into the shadows from which they'd come. But the golden thread between him and Hermione remained, pulsing with a steady, gentle rhythm. What? One of the students started. What did you just do? Hermione opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at Harry, and he saw the same question in her eyes that he felt in his own. What had they just done? I don't know, Harry said honestly. But I think we're going to find out. The train ride continued as if nothing had happened. The students returned to their compartments, chattering excitedly about the attack, about the mysterious golden light that had saved them, about the two first years who had somehow defeated the Death Eaters. Harry and Hermione didn't return to their original compartment. Instead, they sat in the one where they'd found Professor Trelawney, looking at the crystal ball fragments scattered across the floor. You should eat something, Hermione said, pushing a chocolate frog toward him. You must be hungry. Harry wasn't hungry. He was too full of questions. But he took the chocolate anyway, unwrapping it with numb fingers, watching the frog bounce away before he could catch it. The bond, he said finally. What do you know about it? Hermione was silent for a long moment. Then she pulled out her worn copy of Hogwarts, a history, and flipped to a section near the back. I didn't think this would matter, she said. I was just reading about the Founders' magic, the old enchantments they wove into the castle. There was a passage about bonds, magical partnerships that were supposed to be more than just alliances. They called them magic's choice. Harry leaned forward. What does that mean? Look. Hermione pointed to a paragraph. When two witches or wizards are destined to be partners, not in the ordinary sense, but as true magical equals, their magic will recognize itself upon their first meeting. This recognition manifests as a bond, a golden thread that connects their magical cores. Those who share this bond become more powerful than they could ever be alone. Their magic synchronizes, their strengths multiply, and their weaknesses are shored up by the other. Harry read the passage twice. So we're destined to be magical partners? I think so, Hermione said softly. I felt it the moment we met. When you touched the book and your magic recognized mine, I felt something shift. And when the Death Eaters attacked, she shook her head. I've never been able to cast that Patronus charm. I tried before, and the spell just fizzled. But when I was with you, it was like the magic was coming from somewhere else entirely. From both of us, Harry said slowly. From the bond. I think so. Hermione looked at him with those warm brown eyes, and Harry felt something settle in his chest. Fear, yes, they'd almost died today, but also something else. Something that felt like hope. I don't know what this means, Harry. I don't know where the bond will lead us. But I know we're connected now. For better or worse. Harry looked at the glass fragments on the floor, at the golden stag that still stood guard in the doorway, at the girl who had stepped between him and death without hesitation. We face it together, he said. Whatever comes next. Hermione smiled. Together. And for the first time in Harry's life, he believed that everything might actually be okay. The train pulled into Hogwarts Station as the sun began to set, painting the mountains in shades of orange and purple. Harry stepped off the train with Hermione by his side, the golden thread between them still pulsing faintly in his chest. First years. A booming voice cut through the crowd. First years over here. Hagrid's bearded face appeared above the crowd, his smile wide and welcoming. Harry. Hermione. There you are. I heard about what happened on the train, the whole school's heard about it by now. Hello, Hagrid, Harry said weakly. Get ready for the boats, Hagrid said, gesturing down to the lake. Hogwarts is right across the way. You're going to love it, I promise. Harry looked across the dark water at the castle rising against the sky, its windows lit with 1,000 warm lights. It was beautiful. More beautiful than he'd ever imagined. And it was his home now, his and Hermione's. What do you think? Hermione asked quietly. Harry thought about the Dursleys, about the cupboard under the stairs, about the years he'd spent feeling invisible and unwanted. He thought about the bond pulsing in his chest, about the golden stag, about the girl who had changed everything. I think, he said slowly, that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. As they climbed into one of the small boats, Harry felt the bond between them strengthen, not just their connection, but something deeper. Something that felt like the castle itself was reaching out to welcome them. They were home. And whatever challenges lay ahead, Voldemort, the Death Eaters, the war that was surely coming, they would face them together. Because that was what bonded witches and wizards did. They faced the darkness. And they won. The boat glided across the black water, and Harry felt the cold air of the Scottish Highlands against his face. He was tired, bone-tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from using more magic than his body was prepared for, but he was also more awake than he'd ever been in his life. Hermione, he said quietly, when we get to the castle, we should probably talk to someone. A teacher. Someone who might know more about the bond. She nodded. Professor Dumbledore. He'll know what to do. He knows everything about ancient magic, I've read some of his papers, and they're brilliant. He'll be able to help us understand what's happening. Harry hoped she was right. The bond felt good, better than good, it felt like coming home, but it was also terrifying in its intensity. He'd never been connected to anyone like this. He'd never felt someone else's emotions in his own chest, or felt his magic respond to another person's pulse. But he was starting to think that maybe terrifying wasn't always bad. Maybe terrifying was just another word for something important. The boats reached the shore, and the first years scrambled out onto the rocky beach. Hagrid led them up the steps, past a massive oak door, and into the entrance hall of Hogwarts. Harry looked up at the enchanted ceiling, which showed the night sky in all its glory, and felt his breath catch. First years. Professor McGonagall's voice cut through the murmuring crowd. Please wait here until you're called for the sorting. Professor Dumbledore will be with you shortly. She led them into a small side chamber, and Harry took the opportunity to study the other first years. Most of them looked just as nervous as he felt, some were even trembling. He spotted a round-faced boy with a toad in his pocket, presumably the Neville from the train, and a red-haired girl who was whispering frantically to her friend. Hermione, Harry said quietly, what do you think we should do? About the bond, I mean. Should we tell people? Hermione bit her lip. I think we should tell Dumbledore. But maybe we should wait until after the sorting. We don't want to cause a panic before we even know what house we're in. Harry nodded, but his stomach was churning. He'd read about the houses, the brave Gryffindors, the cunning Slytherins, the loyal Hufflepuffs, and the clever Ravenclaws. He didn't know where he belonged. He didn't know where he fit. But as he looked at Hermione, her face set in that determined expression she'd worn on the train, he realized that it didn't matter. Wherever they ended up, they'd still be bonded. They'd still be connected. They'd still be together. The door opened, and Professor McGonagall stepped through. All right, first years, she said. Follow me. The sorting hat ceremony was like something out of a dream. Harry watched as students stepped forward, one by one, and the hat shouted out their houses. To the sound of cheering and applause. When Hermione's name was called, Harry felt his heart leap into his throat. Hermione Granger. She walked up to the stool with perfect poise, her head held high, and when the hat touched her head, it took less than a second to shout, "Gryffindor." Harry cheered louder than anyone, his face aching with a smile he couldn't help. The golden thread between them pulsed with warmth and joy, and he felt Hermione's exhilaration as if it were his own. Harry Potter. The whispers started immediately. Harry felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on him as he walked up to the stool, and he tried to ignore the fear creeping into his chest. Please, he thought desperately. Please let me be with Hermione. The hat settled on his head, and a voice whispered in his ear. Interesting. Very interesting. I see courage, yes, but also a thirst for glory. A desire to prove yourself. Where to put you? Please, Harry thought again. Gryffindor. Let me be in Gryffindor with Hermione. The hat was silent for a long moment. Then it said, Gryffindor, yes, I think that will do nicely. Gryffindor. Harry's roar of relief was lost in a thunderous applause from the Gryffindor table. He nearly tripped over his own feet as he walked toward them, and when he reached the table, Hermione was there, beaming at him, and the bond between them sang with shared joy. I knew it, she said. I knew you'd be a Gryffindor. Lucky guess, Harry said, but he was grinning so hard his face ached. The rest of the sorting passed in a blur. Harry sat next to Hermione, eating food that appeared from nowhere, listening to the chatter of the older students. The bond between them was warm and steady, a constant presence in the back of his mind, and for the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged. When the feast was over, Dumbledore rose to give his speech. Harry listened with half an ear, his attention caught by the golden thread pulsing in his chest. Before I let you all go, Dumbledore said, I must warn you that the Forbidden Forest is, as its name suggests, forbidden. That the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side is also forbidden, unless you have a death wish. And, his eyes swept over the hall, and for just a moment, Harry could have sworn they lingered on him and Hermione. That there are powers at work in this castle that are older than any of us. Magic that has not been seen in centuries. If any of you encounter anything unusual, please report it to a member of staff. Harry exchanged a look with Hermione. Did Dumbledore know? Had he sensed the bond? I'm sure it's nothing, Hermione said quietly, but her voice was uncertain. The feast ended, and the prefects led them to the Gryffindor common room. Harry walked through the portrait of the fat lady, up the spiral staircase, and into the dormitory that would be his home for the next 7 years. But he couldn't sleep. He lay in his four-poster bed, staring at the canopy above him, feeling the bond pulse in his chest. Hermione was in the girls' dormitory, but the bond connected them across space, and he could feel her presence like a warm light in the darkness. What had happened on the train? What was this bond? And what did the future hold for them? He didn't have answers. Not yet. But as he finally drifted off to sleep, the golden thread between them pulsed one last time, and Harry dreamed of stags made of light, of dragons soaring through the sky, of a destiny that was just beginning to unfold. The morning came too quickly. Harry woke to sunlight streaming through the windows, and the first thing he felt was the bond, warm, steady, pulsing with a gentle rhythm like a second heartbeat. Hermione was awake. He could feel it. He got dressed quickly, his mind racing with questions he didn't have answers to. The common room was already crowded with students, and Harry found Hermione sitting by the fire, a book open in her lap. Good morning, she said, looking up with a smile. Morning, Harry said. Did you sleep? Not much. She closed the book. I've been reading about magical bonds. There's not a lot of information, but what I found is, she lowered her voice. Intense. Bonded witches and wizards are incredibly powerful. But the bond also comes with risks. What kind of risks? Hermione hesitated. If one of us dies, the other feels it. They might not survive the shock. And the bond can be exploited, dark wizards can use it to hurt both of us at once. Harry felt cold settle into his stomach. Then we need to make sure we protect each other. That's the other thing, Hermione said. The bond works both ways. We're stronger together, but we're also more vulnerable. If someone finds out about the bond, they could use it against us. So we keep it secret, Harry said firmly. Just between us and Dumbledore. Hermione nodded. I agree. They spent the morning in a fog of new impressions. Hogwarts was vast, full of secret passageways and hidden rooms. The golden thread between them stayed warm and steady, and Harry found himself constantly reaching for it, as if to make sure it was still there. After breakfast, they were discussing how to find Dumbledore's office when the headmaster himself appeared in the entrance hall, as if he'd been waiting for them. Mr. Potter, Miss Granger, he said, his eyes twinkling. I was hoping to have a word with you. Please, follow me. They walked up the spiraling staircase to Dumbledore's office, past portraits of sleeping headmasters and strange silver instruments that whirred and puffed. When they reached the office, Dumbledore gestured for them to sit. I've been expecting this, he said, his voice serious. The bond that you two share, it's the oldest form of magic known to wizard kind. Magic's choice. It chooses only the most compatible partners, the witches and wizards who are meant to be together. Harry and Hermione exchanged a look. Where does it come from? Harry asked. Dumbledore leaned back in his chair. The bond originated with the founders of Hogwarts. They discovered that certain pairs of witches and wizards could amplify each other's power beyond what was thought possible. They called these pairings destined magical partners. And they passed down the secrets of the bond through the ages. But why us? Hermione asked. Why now? Because Voldemort is rising, Dumbledore said bluntly. The darkness is gathering, and the bond chose you two to stand against it. You are the magic's answer to the threat that faces us all. Harry felt the weight of the words settle on his shoulders. He was just 11 years old. How could he possibly be the answer to anything? What do we do? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dumbledore smiled, a warm, kind smile that seemed to reach into Harry's soul and calm the fear there. You learn. You grow. And you trust the bond that has joined you together. The magic will guide you, if you let it. Harry looked at Hermione. She was watching him with those warm brown eyes, her face set in that familiar expression of determination. Together, he said. Together, she agreed. And somewhere in the depths of the castle, the magic of Hogwarts sang with joy, celebrating the return of the bond that had not been seen for centuries. The destiny of the magical world had just begun. Chapter 2, The Bond Awakens. The first thing Harry noticed when he woke the next morning was that the golden thread between him and Hermione had grown thicker. It pulsed with a steady warmth that seemed to emanate from somewhere deep in his chest, and when he reached for it with his mind, a skill he hadn't known he possessed until this moment, he felt her presence like a second heartbeat, steady and reassuring. She was already awake. He could sense her moving through the girls' dormitory, her thoughts brushing against the edges of his consciousness like moth wings against glass. Not words, exactly, but feelings. Anticipation. Curiosity. A hint of nervousness that she would never have shown on her face. Harry sat up in his four-poster bed, his heart racing. The bond was stronger than it had been yesterday. He could feel it changing, growing, settling into something more permanent. The golden thread that had been a thin line between them was now a cord, woven from light and magic, and it hummed with a power that made his fingertips tingle. Potter. Ron Weasley's voice cut through his reverie. You coming to breakfast, or are you planning to sleep through the whole first day? Harry blinked, the world snapping back into focus. Ron was already dressed, his red hair sticking up in all directions, his freckled face flushed with excitement. He'd been sorted into Gryffindor the night before, and his enthusiasm for everything Hogwarts was infectious. Yeah, coming, Harry said, pulling himself out of bed. He dressed quickly, his mind still half on the bond, half on the day ahead. They had their first classes today, charms with Flitwick, transfiguration with McGonagall, and defense against the dark arts with a professor whose name he couldn't quite remember. But first, breakfast. And Hermione. The common room was already bustling when Harry and Ron descended the spiral staircase. Groups of students clustered around the fire, comparing schedules and complaining about homework. Harry scanned the room automatically, his eyes searching for. There. Hermione was sitting in a corner by the window, a book open in her lap, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked up as Harry approached, and the smile that spread across her face made the bond pulse with warmth. "Morning," she said. "Did you sleep well?" "Not really," Harry admitted. "The bond. I know." Hermione's voice dropped to a whisper. "I felt it too. It's stronger today, isn't it?" Harry nodded. "What does it mean?" "I've been reading about it." Hermione gestured at the book in her lap. "There's a section in Advanced Magical Theory that mentions something called bond maturation. It's a process where the connection between two magical partners develops over time, becoming more sophisticated and powerful. The first few days are the most intense." "Intense how?" Harry asked, sliding into the seat beside her. Hermione bit her lip. "Increased sensitivity. Emotional transference. Possible," she hesitated. "Possible shared sensations. I can feel when you're nervous, Harry. I could feel it before you even sat down." Harry's stomach dropped. "You can feel what I'm feeling." "Not exactly emotions, not yet. More like echoes. The bond is still developing. But if the books are right, the connection will only get stronger." "And what are we supposed to do about that?" Harry asked. "We can't have people knowing. Professor Dumbledore said we could come to him if we needed help," Hermione reminded him. "But I think we should try to understand it ourselves first. The bond is part of us now. We need to learn how to control it." Harry opened his mouth to respond, but Ron had appeared at the table, a plate piled high with bacon and eggs in his hands. "Morning, Hermione," Ron said cheerfully. "You look like you've been up for hours." "I have," Hermione said. "I've been doing some reading on ancient magic," Harry interrupted quickly. "She's been reading about ancient magic." Ron shrugged, clearly more interested in his breakfast than in ancient magic. "Fair enough. Speaking of which, did you hear about the third-floor corridor? The one Dumbledore said was forbidden. Fred and George say there's a three-headed dog in there." "A three-headed dog?" Harry repeated, his mind struggling to process this information alongside everything else. "Fluffy," Ron said matter-of-factly. "That's what Hagrid calls it. Apparently he brought it in from some Greek bloke a few weeks ago. Fred and George saw it when they were sneaking around after curfew." Harry and Hermione exchanged a look. There was something in that corridor, something important enough to be guarded by a three-headed dog. And if Voldemort was truly rising, as Dumbledore had said, "We should probably stay away from it," Hermione said firmly. "A three-headed dog is clearly dangerous, and we have more important things to focus on. Like our classes." Ron groaned. "You sound like Percy." "Percy's a prefect," Hermione said. "He knows what's important." "And what's important is having fun," Ron countered. "Quidditch, chess, sneaking around." "Focusing on our studies," Hermione interrupted. "Especially defense against the dark arts. If Voldemort is really coming back, we need to be prepared." The name hung in the air like a chill. Even Ron, who had been so cheerful moments before, went pale. "Don't say that name," he whispered. "It's bad luck." "It's just a name," Hermione said, but her voice wavered slightly. "Fear of a name only increases fear of the thing itself." "She's right," Harry said quietly. "We can't be afraid of him. Not if we're going to fight him." Ron stared at him. "Fight him? Harry, we're 11. We're just kids." "We're bonded," Harry said, and the word slipped out before he could stop it. "Hermione and I, we have something. Something that makes us stronger together." Ron's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, something?" Harry opened his mouth, then closed it. He hadn't meant to say that. But the bond was pulsing with urgency, with something that felt almost like warning. "Nothing," Harry said quickly. "I just meant we're friends. We look out for each other." Ron seemed satisfied with this explanation, turning back to his breakfast with renewed enthusiasm. But Harry could feel Hermione's eyes on him, and when he looked at her, there was a question in her gaze. "We need to be more careful," her expression seemed to say. "We can't let anyone else find out." Harry nodded almost imperceptibly. He knew she was right. But the bond was still pulsing with that urgent warmth, and Harry had the strangest feeling that something was coming. Something that would test the bond in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Their first class was charms, and Harry was nervous. He'd read about spellcasting in the books Hermione had lent him, wand movements, incantations, the precise control required to make magic work, but reading and doing were very different things. "Welcome, welcome," Professor Flitwick said as they entered the classroom. He was a tiny wizard, barely tall enough to see over his lectern, but his eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Today we'll be learning the levitation charm. The incantation is Wingardium Leviosa. The wand movement is a swish and a flick." Harry listened carefully, trying to memorize the instructions. The bond was pulsing gently in his chest, and he could feel Hermione's focus sharpening, her mind already working through the practical applications of the spell. "Now, you'll be working in pairs," Flitwick said. "One partner will attempt to levitate their feather, while the other observes and offers guidance. Then you'll switch." Harry looked at Hermione. She was already holding her feather, her wand poised in her hand. "Ready?" she asked. Harry nodded. "Try it." Hermione took a deep breath. Wingardium Leviosa. The feather rose from the desk, hovering in the air with perfect stability. It was beautiful, a delicate white quill suspended in space, as if time itself had paused to admire it. "Excellent!" Flitwick exclaimed, clapping his hands. "Excellent, Miss Granger. 10 points to Gryffindor." Harry felt a surge of pride that wasn't entirely his own. The bond was pulsing with Hermione's satisfaction, her joy at having mastered the spell so quickly. "My turn," Harry said, picking up his own feather. He focused on the feather, trying to replicate Hermione's perfect technique. But his hand was shaking, and the incantation came out wrong, Wingardium Leviosa, and the feather just lay there, stubbornly, refusing to move. "Try again," Hermione said softly. "Slow down. Swish and flick, remember." Harry took a deep breath and tried again. Wingardium Leviosa. This time, something happened. The feather twitched, rose a few inches, then fell back to the desk. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. "Better," Flitwick said, beaming. "Keep practicing, Mr. Potter." Harry felt a glow of satisfaction that he knew was partly his and partly Hermione's. She was proud of him, he could feel it. And that made him more determined than ever to get it right. He tried again. And again. Each time, the feather rose a little higher, stayed in the air a little longer. And each time, the bond pulsed with Hermione's encouragement, her belief in him. By the end of the lesson, Harry could levitate his feather to the ceiling and keep it there for nearly a minute. It wasn't as good as Hermione's effortless control, but it was something. "I knew you could do it," Hermione said as they packed up their books. "You just needed to trust yourself." "Trust myself?" Harry repeated. "I think I needed to trust you. When you believed in me, it was easier to believe in myself." Hermione's face flushed. That's probably the bond. It amplifies positive emotions, from what I've read." "Maybe," Harry said. "But I think it's also just you. You're a good teacher, Hermione." She smiled, and the bond pulsed with something warm and golden. Harry felt his own cheeks flush, and he looked away, suddenly awkward. "Next class," he said quickly. "Transfiguration. We should probably head over." Transfiguration was Professor McGonagall, and she was terrifying. She strode into the classroom with the bearing of a general, her robe swishing behind her, and immediately launched into a lecture about the dangers of transforming one object into another. "You will not be attempting any transformations today," she said firmly. "Today, you will be taking notes. Tomorrow, you will be watching a demonstration. And only after I am satisfied that you have a thorough understanding of the theoretical principles will you be allowed to attempt practical application. Harry scribbled notes as fast as he could, trying to keep up with McGonagall's rapid-fire lecture. The bond was pulsing with Hermione's focus, her excitement at learning something new. But there was something else there, too, a faint undercurrent of anxiety that Harry didn't fully understand. "Harry," Hermione whispered, leaning toward him. "Do you feel that?" "Feel what?" "I don't know. Something strange. It's coming from the bond, but it's not from me." Harry frowned. The bond was pulsing with an energy he couldn't identify, not his, not Hermione's. It was like there was a third presence, something that was pressing against the edges of their connection. "Maybe it's just the magic in the room," Harry suggested. "This is a very old castle. There's probably all sorts of magical residue." Hermione didn't look convinced, but she nodded and turned back to her notes. The rest of the lesson passed without incident. McGonagall dismissed them with a warning to review their notes before the next class, and Harry felt a wave of relief wash over him as they left the room. "Professor McGonagall is terrifying," he admitted. "She's brilliant," Hermione countered. "One of the finest transfiguration masters in the world. I read about her in modern magical history. She's published dozens of papers on the theory of." "I'm sure," Harry said quickly. "But she's still terrifying." The bond pulsed with amusement, and Harry could feel Hermione's laughter bubbling up inside her. "Fine," she admitted. "She's a little terrifying. But in a good way. I'll take your word for it." They stopped in the corridor, surrounded by the bustle of students moving between classes. The bond was pulsing with a strange, restless energy that Harry couldn't quite identify. "What's wrong?" Hermione asked, her brow furrowing. "I can feel something." "You're nervous about something." "I don't know what it is," Harry admitted. "It's like the bond is trying to tell me something. But I can't understand it." Hermione reached out and took his hand. The contact sent a jolt of warmth through him, and the bond flared with golden light. "Tell me what you feel," she said softly. Harry closed his eyes and focused on the bond. It was pulsing with urgency now, a sense of something approaching. "Danger," he said quietly. "I think it's warning us about danger." "What kind of danger?" Hermione asked, her voice sharp with alarm. "I don't know. But it's coming. Soon." The corridor around them was suddenly silent. Harry opened his eyes and saw that the other students had stopped, their faces turned toward the far end of the hall. "What's going on?" Hermione asked. Harry didn't have time to answer. A cold mist was rolling down the corridor, and with it came a wave of despair that made his knees buckle. He'd felt something like this before, on the train, when the Death Eaters had attacked. "Run," he whispered. "We need to run." But his legs wouldn't move. The mist had reached them, and Harry felt the despair washing over him, dragging him down into darkness. The bond flared with Hermione's fear, her desperation, and Harry reached for her hand, clutching it like a lifeline. "Harry," Hermione started, but her voice was cut off by a shriek that seemed to come from everywhere at once. A figure emerged from the mist. It was tall and cloaked, its face hidden beneath a hood, and it moved with a ghastly floating motion. Where its hands should have been, there were rotting, claw-like appendages. "Death Eater," Harry breathed. "They're here. They found us." "Not Death Eaters," Hermione said, her voice trembling. It's a Dementor. An actual Dementor. But they're not supposed to be." The Dementor glided toward them, and Harry felt the cold despair intensify. Memories flashed through his mind, the cupboard under the stairs. His mother screaming, the green flash of light. "No!" Hermione shouted. She was on her feet, her wand out, her voice defiant. "Expecto Patronum." A silvery light burst from her wand, but it was weak, flickering. The Dementor barely paused. "Harry!" Hermione cried. "Help me!" "The bond, use it." Harry didn't understand what she meant, but he didn't have time to ask. The Dementor was almost upon them, and the cold despair was crushing him, suffocating him. He reached for the bond with everything he had, and he felt Hermione's magic surge to meet his. Together, they screamed, "Expecto Patronum!" The golden stag burst from their joined wands, enormous and blazing with light. It charged at the Dementor, and the creature shrieked, recoiling from the blazing gold. But it didn't retreat. The stag circled them, a protective barrier of light, and the Dementor hovered at the edge of the mist, waiting. "It's not going anywhere," Hermione gasped. "It's trying to wear us down. The Patronus will fade. Then we'll just have to make it stronger," Harry said fiercely. Together. He poured everything he had into the bond, his courage, his determination, his refusal to let the darkness win. Hermione's magic met his, and together, they created something new. The stag grew brighter, its form solidifying into something almost real. It charged at the Dementor again, and this time, the creature fled. The mist dissipated. The cold despair lifted. And Harry found himself on the floor, his heart pounding. Hermione collapsed beside him. "Are you?" he started. "I'm fine," Hermione gasped. "Harry, did you see that? The Patronus, it was bigger than anything I've ever read about. And we cast it together. That's not supposed to be possible." "The bond," Harry said. "It must have amplified our magic." They helped each other to their feet, and Harry saw that they'd attracted an audience. A group of older students had gathered at the end of the corridor, their faces pale with shock. "A Dementor," one of them whispered. "Here. In Hogwarts." "It's not supposed to be possible," Hermione said. "The Ministry controls the Dementors. They're never allowed near the school." Harry looked down at his hands. They were trembling, but the bond was warm and steady, a reminder that he wasn't alone. "We need to tell Dumbledore," he said. "Something's wrong. This attack, it's connected to the Death Eaters on the train. Voldemort is trying to find us." Hermione nodded, her face pale but determined. "We'll go to him tonight. After dinner. We can't let this continue." Harry agreed. But as they walked toward the Great Hall, the bond pulsed with a new sensation, something that felt like fear. Not his, not Hermione's. Something outside them, something that was trying to reach them. The bond is connected to more than just us, Harry realized. It's connected to the castle itself. To the old magic that was woven into the stones. And somehow, that terrified him more than any Dementor ever could. The Great Hall was buzzing with talk when Harry and Hermione arrived. Students were clustered in groups, their voices raised in excitement and fear. "I heard there was a Dementor in the corridor," one boy said. "Actually inside the castle." "Impossible. The Ministry wouldn't let them." "I saw it myself. It was attacking Harry Potter." Harry felt his cheeks flush as heads turned in his direction. He hated the attention, the whispers, the stares. "Come on," Hermione said quietly. "Let's find a seat." They sat at the Gryffindor table, and Harry was grateful for the distraction of Ron and the other first years, who were peppering him with questions. "Was it really a Dementor?" Ron asked. "What happened? How did you escape?" "We cast a Patronus," Hermione said. She stopped, glancing at Harry. "We cast it together." "A Patronus?" One of the older students, a boy named Percy Weasley, leaned forward. "First years can't cast patron uses. It's incredibly advanced magic." "First years can't cast Dementor-repelling patron uses," Hermione corrected. "But we did." "How?" Percy demanded. Harry and Hermione exchanged a look. They couldn't tell the truth. The bond was still a secret, something too dangerous to share. "We just did," Harry said lamely. "It was the bond." "Bond?" Percy's eyes narrowed. "What bond?" "Nothing," Hermione said quickly. "Harry meant we were in danger, and we acted together. It was instinct." Percy didn't look convinced, but he was interrupted by the arrival of Professor Dumbledore, who had appeared at the head of the hall. "Students," he said, and his voice carried over the noise like a bell. "I have been informed of the incident in the corridor. I want to assure you that Hogwarts remains the safest place in the wizarding world. The Dementor that entered the school has been contained, and measures are being taken to ensure it does not happen again. Harry exchanged a look with Hermione. Contained, he thought. That means it's still here. Somewhere. But why was a Dementor here? Ron whispered. They're not supposed to come near Hogwarts. I don't know, Harry admitted. But I don't think it was an accident. The rest of the meal passed in a blur. Harry couldn't focus on the food, couldn't focus on the conversations around him. His mind was consumed by the bond, the Dementor, the mystery of it all. After dinner, he and Hermione slipped away from the crowd and made their way to Dumbledore's office. The portrait of the fat lady challenged them, but Hermione's answer, official business with the headmaster, seemed to satisfy her. Dumbledore was waiting for them, his eyes twinkling despite the seriousness of the situation. I anticipated you would come, he said. Please, sit. Harry and Hermione sat in the chairs opposite his desk, and Dumbledore steepled his fingers. I have spoken with the Ministry, he said. The Dementor's appearance was a breach of protocol. However, I suspect that this was not an accident. There are forces at work in the wizarding world that are trying to reach you. The bond between you is becoming known. Known? Harry repeated. But how? Magic leaves traces, Dumbledore explained. The golden energy of the bond is detectable to those who know how to look. I have been concealing it with protective enchantments, but there are limits to what even I can do. Hermione leaned forward. So we're being targeted because of the bond? Precisely, Dumbledore said. The bond is old magic, powerful magic. Those who would use it for dark purposes will stop at nothing to control it. Or to destroy it. Can they? Harry asked. Can they destroy the bond? Dumbledore was silent for a long moment. The bond is powerful. It is woven into the very fabric of your souls. But like all magic, it has vulnerabilities. If one of you were to be corrupted by dark magic, the bond could be twisted. If one of you were to be killed, the other would be greatly weakened. Harry felt cold settle into his stomach. So we have to protect each other. Yes, Dumbledore agreed. And you have to learn to use the bond's power. It will grow stronger as you grow stronger. But it will also become more obvious. More tempting for dark wizards to exploit. How do we protect it? Hermione asked. Dumbledore smiled. By being worthy of it. By using it for good. By standing together against the darkness. The bond is magic's choice, it chose you for a reason. Trust in that reason, and you will find the strength you need. Harry wanted to argue. He wanted to say that he wasn't strong enough, that the bond had made a mistake, that he was just a boy from a cupboard who had no business fighting dark wizards. But as he looked at Hermione, at the determination in her eyes, he felt the bond pulse with warmth and certainty. They were in this together. Whatever came next. The days that followed were strange and wonderful. Harry threw himself into his studies, determined to become worthy of the bond. He devoured books on magical theory, practiced spells until his fingers ached, and watched Hermione's progress with a mixture of pride and envy. The bond was changing. Every day, it grew stronger, more sophisticated. Harry could sense Hermione's emotions with increasing clarity, her excitement when she mastered a new spell, her frustration when she couldn't solve a problem, her quiet satisfaction when she helped someone else. And she could sense his emotions too. Harry found himself sharing everything with her, his fears, his hopes, his dreams. There was no point in hiding. The bond knew everything. At night, when he lay in his four-poster bed, Harry could feel Hermione's presence like a warm light in the darkness. The bond pulsed with a gentle rhythm, and he knew that even in sleep, they were connected. They started to experiment with the bond's power. In Charms class, they discovered that they could cast spells together that were impossible to cast alone. In Transfiguration, they found that their combined concentration made transformations easier, more precise. Even in Defense Against the Dark Arts, where their professor seemed determined to make them fail, they found ways to work together. We're getting stronger, Harry said one evening as they studied in the common room. Every day. The bond is growing. Hermione nodded. I've been reading about it. The bond feeds on positive emotions, courage, love, trust. The more we feel those things, the stronger it becomes. What about negative emotions? Harry asked. Fear, anger, hate. The bond can be corrupted by them, Hermione said quietly. That's what Dumbledore meant. If one of us were to become consumed by darkness, the bond would twist. It would amplify our worst instincts. Harry felt a chill. We have to watch out for that. For each other. Hermione reached out and took his hand. The bond flared with warmth, and Harry felt her love, her pure, unconditional love, washing over him. I'm not going anywhere, she said. We're in this together. Whatever happens. Harry squeezed her hand. Together. The bond pulsed with light, and Harry felt something shift in his chest. The bond had reached a new level, a deeper connection that went beyond simple emotion sharing. Did you feel that? Hermione asked, her eyes wide. Yes, Harry breathed. It was beautiful, she finished. It was beautiful. They sat in comfortable silence, the bond pulsing with golden light, and Harry knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The Quidditch tryouts were the next day, and Harry was nervous. He'd never played Quidditch before, he'd only learned about the game a few weeks ago, but there was something about the idea of flying that called to him. You'll be brilliant, Hermione said as they walked onto the Quidditch pitch. I can feel it through the bond. You can feel my nervousness, you mean, Harry said dryly. That too, Hermione admitted. But I can also feel your excitement. You want this, Harry. You really want this. Harry took a deep breath. I do. The tryouts were intense. Harry was given a broomstick, an old clean sweep that had seen better days, and told to fly around the pitch, catching the quaffle and dodging bludgers. The moment he rose into the air, he felt it. The bond pulsed with Hermione's encouragement, and his fear melted away. He flew like he'd been born to it, weaving through the air with instinctive grace. Potter. The captain of the Gryffindor team, a tall boy named Oliver Wood, called out. You're a natural. Have you ever played before? First time, Harry admitted, landing shakily. First time. Wood's eyes widened. You've got to be joking. That was incredible. Harry felt a surge of pride that was partly his and partly Hermione's. Thank you. You're on the team, Wood said firmly. Seeker. You've got the eyes for it, and you're fast. I've never seen anyone move like that. Harry was stunned. He'd only been flying for an hour, and now he was on the team. It seemed impossible. But when he looked at Hermione, she was beaming. I told you, she said. I told you you'd be brilliant. I couldn't have done it without you, Harry said honestly. When I was flying, I could feel you through the bond. You were my anchor. Hermione's cheeks flushed. That's probably just the bond. Probably, Harry agreed. But I still mean it. The bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry knew that he'd meant every word. The Halloween feast was a grand affair, with pumpkins floating overhead and bats fluttering through the enchanted ceiling. Harry and Hermione sat together at the Gryffindor table, their plates piled high with food. I can't believe it's been 2 months, Hermione said. It feels like we just got here. I know what you mean, Harry agreed. Everything's changed so much. The bond pulsed with a strange, restless energy, and Harry frowned. Do you feel that? The bond? Hermione asked. It's been buzzing all day. I thought it was just the excitement of the feast. No, Harry said slowly. It's something else. Something's wrong. The bond pulsed with urgency, and Harry felt a cold dread settle into his stomach. We need to go, he said. Now. The air grew cold around them, and Harry saw it. A great, monstrous figure, half giant, half beast, was lumbering through the entrance hall, its fists swinging, its face contorted with rage. "Hermione!" Harry shouted. "We need to get to Dumbledore." But there was no time. The figure, a troll, Harry realized, a mountain troll, had spotted them. It lumbered toward them, its club raised, its yellow eyes glinting with malicious intelligence. "Run!" Harry screamed. But Hermione didn't move. She stood her ground, her wand raised, her face set in that familiar expression of determination. "We don't run," she said firmly. "We stand together." The troll swung its club, and Harry saw Hermione's eyes widen. He threw himself in front of her, pushing her aside, and the club struck his shoulder with sickening force. He hit the ground hard, the impact driving the breath from his lungs. The Bond screamed with Hermione's pain, not physical, but emotional. She'd seen him fall. "Harry," she screamed. "Harry." He tried to say something, but he couldn't. The world was spinning, darkness creeping at the edges of his vision. He saw Hermione raise her wand, saw a golden light erupt from its tip, and then the darkness consumed him. Harry woke in the hospital wing, his shoulder bandaged, his head throbbing. The Bond was pulsing with warmth, and he could feel Hermione's presence, her relief that he was alive. "Harry." Hermione was at his side, her face streaked with tears. "You're awake. I was so worried." "I'm fine," Harry croaked. "What happened?" "The troll," Hermione said. "I managed to knock it out with a stunning spell. It was the Bond, I think. I felt your pain, and it gave me the strength I needed." Harry reached out with his free hand and took hers. The Bond flared with golden light, and he felt the warmth of her love washing over him. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For saving me." "I'm the one who should be thanking you," Hermione said fiercely. "You jumped in front of a troll for me. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen." Harry felt his cheeks flush. "I didn't think. I couldn't let it hurt you." The Bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry felt something shift. The connection between them had deepened again, becoming something more powerful, more intimate. "We should be more careful," Hermione said. "We're being targeted, Harry. The troll was no accident. Someone sent it." "Voldemort," Harry said. "Or one of his followers." Hermione nodded. "We need to learn to defend ourselves properly. The Bond is powerful, but it's not enough on its own." Harry agreed. "We'll practice together. Every day." "Every day," Hermione repeated. The Bond pulsed with determination, and Harry knew that. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The weeks that followed were filled with training. Harry and Hermione met in secret, in empty classrooms and secluded corners of the castle, and they practiced until their magic was humming with power. They learned to cast spells in perfect synchronization, their voices blending into a single chant. They learned to sense each other's intentions, moving in perfect harmony without speaking. They even learned to share their thoughts, the Bond becoming a two-way channel of communication. "You've improved dramatically," Hermione said one evening. "Your spellcasting is almost as good as mine now." "Almost," Harry agreed. "But you're still ahead." Hermione's cheeks flushed. "It's because of the Bond. We amplify each other." "Maybe," Harry said. "But I still think it's because you're brilliant." The Bond pulsed with warmth, and Hermione looked away, suddenly shy. "We should probably get back to the common room," she said. "It's getting late." Harry agreed, but as they walked through the corridors, the Bond pulsed with a strange, restless energy. "What is it?" Hermione asked. "I don't know," Harry admitted. "The Bond is trying to tell me something. But I can't understand it." Hermione frowned. "Maybe it's connected to the book we found in the restricted section. The one about magical bonds." Harry nodded. "I think we need to investigate it further. There's something in that book, something important." "Not tonight," Hermione said firmly. "It's past midnight, and we've already been caught breaking curfew once. We need to be careful." Harry agreed, but the bond was still pulsing with urgency, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. The storm hit the next day, lashing the castle with rain and wind. Harry and Hermione spent the afternoon in the library, searching for more information about the bond. "Here," Hermione said, pulling a dusty book from the shelf. "This one has a chapter on ancient bonds. It says they were used by the founders to amplify their power and protect the castle." Harry leaned forward, reading over her shoulder. "It says the bonds can be strengthened by physical proximity. The closer we are to each other, the stronger the connection." Hermione looked up, her eyes meeting his. "So if we're together, the bond is stronger," Harry finished. "We need to stay close." The bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry felt something shift. The connection between them was deepening, becoming more intimate. "Harry," Hermione said softly, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I think," she hesitated. "I think the bond is more than just magic. It's a part of us. It's not separate. It is us." Harry didn't understand what she meant, but the bond was pulsing with warmth, and he knew that she was right. "I felt it too," he admitted. "When you're happy, I'm happy. When you're scared, I'm scared. It's like we're two halves of the same whole." Hermione smiled. "Exactly. That's what I've been trying to say." The bond pulsed with golden light, and Harry knew that they'd found something important. Something that would change everything. The final exam of the year was Defense Against the Dark Arts, and Harry was nervous. Their professor, Quirrell, was incompetent and cowardly, and Harry had learned more from Hermione and his own independent study than from any of Quirrell's lessons. "Don't worry," Hermione said as they walked to the exam hall. "You know this stuff. You've been practicing for weeks." "I know," Harry said. "But Quirrell, he's always had it out for me. Since the troll incident, he's been watching me." "The bond is warning us," Hermione said quietly. "It's telling us that Quirrell is dangerous." Harry nodded. "I felt it too. There's something wrong with him. Something that doesn't make sense." The bond pulsed with urgency, and Harry's heart raced. "What is it?" Hermione asked. "The bond," Harry said slowly. "It's pulling me. There's something I need to find. Something hidden." "Hidden where?" Hermione asked. "Follow me." Harry led Hermione through the corridors, following the bond's pull like a compass. They passed through the entrance hall, past the stone corridors, and finally stopped in front of a massive oak door. "The third-floor corridor," Harry breathed. "The forbidden one." "We can't go in there," Hermione said, but her voice was uncertain. "The bond wants us to," Harry said. "I can feel it. Something is waiting for us there." They pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was dark, lit only by the faint golden glow of the bond. Harry heard a low growl, and he saw it, a massive three-headed dog, all teeth and drool and rage. "Fluffy," Hermione breathed. "It's Fluffy." The dog lunged, and Harry threw himself in front of Hermione, shielding her from the attack. The bond flared with golden light, and Harry felt his magic rising to meet the threat. "Together," he shouted. "We have to do this together." Hermione joined him, and together, they raised their wands. Golden light exploded from their joined magic, and the dog recoiled, whimpering. "The trapdoor," Harry said, pointing. "It's guarding something." "We need to see what," Hermione said. "We need to get past it." They cast spell after spell, and the dog backed away, whimpering and snarling. Finally, Harry took a risk. He reached out with the bond, touching the dog's mind, and he felt it: fear, pain, confusion. "Its master," Harry said. "It's scared of its master. Someone's been hurting it." "Who?" Hermione demanded. "I don't know. But the bond, it's showing me something. A name. Voldemort. It's Voldemort." Hermione's face went pale. "He's already here. In Hogwarts." "Hidden," Harry said. "But close. He's trying to get to the trapdoor." He wants something that's hidden inside. The bond pulsed with urgency, and Harry felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "We need to tell Dumbledore," he said. "Now." They ran through the corridors, the bond pulsing with warmth and fear. They didn't stop until they reached Dumbledore's office, where the headmaster was waiting for them. "Sir," Harry gasped. "Voldemort, he's here." "In the castle." Dumbledore's face grew serious. "I know. The bond has been warning me for weeks." "Weeks?" Hermione repeated. "You knew." "I suspected," Dumbledore admitted. "The bond between you is powerful, but it is also a beacon. Voldemort has felt it. He wants to use it, or destroy it." Harry felt a surge of fear. "What do we do?" Dumbledore smiled. "You protect each other. You trust the bond. And you don't give up hope." The bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry knew that Dumbledore was right. They would face this together. The final confrontation came in the dungeon, where Voldemort's minion was guarding the trapdoor. Harry and Hermione faced him together, their wands raised, the bond pulsing with golden light. "You can't stop me," Quirrell sneered. "The Dark Lord will rise again." "Not if we have anything to say about it," Harry said fiercely. Quirrell raised his wand, and the battle began. Spells flew through the air, red and green and gold, and Harry and Hermione moved together in perfect harmony. The bond flared with power, and Harry felt his magic rising to meet the threat. He thought of Hermione, of the courage and love that the bond had given him, and he poured everything he had into the spell. "Expecto Patronum," they shouted together. The golden stag burst from their wands, enormous and blazing with light. It charged at Quirrell, and he screamed, his body dissolving into ash. The bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry felt a surge of triumph. They had won. That night, Harry and Hermione sat in the common room, the bond pulsing gently between them. The threat was over, for now, and they had won. "I can't believe we actually did it," Hermione said softly. "We faced Voldemort's minion and won. Thanks to the bond," Harry said. "We couldn't have done it without each other." Hermione smiled. "I know. That's the point." The bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry felt something shift. The connection between them had deepened again, becoming something more powerful, more intimate. "We're in this together," Harry said. "For life." "For life," Hermione agreed. The golden thread between them pulsed with light, and Harry knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The bond had awakened. And the world would never be the same. Chapter 3, Secrets of the Ancient Bond. The summer sun cast long shadows across the Gryffindor common room, but Harry barely noticed. He was hunched over a battered leather-bound book that Hermione had unearthed from the deepest recesses of the restricted section, his fingers tracing the faded script with reverent caution. The golden thread between them pulsed with shared concentration, a warm current that flowed beneath his skin like a second circulatory system. "Look at this," Hermione said, sliding another volume across the table toward him. Her voice was barely above a whisper, though the common room was empty save for the two of them. Most students had retreated to the grounds, eager to soak up the last rays of summer before the new term began. This passage specifically mentions magical partners. It says they were considered the rarest form of magical connection, even rarer than the unbreakable vow. Harry pulled the book toward him, squinting at the cramped handwriting. The pages were yellowed with age, the ink faded to a rusty brown, but the words were still legible. "The bond of true magical partnership," he read aloud, "is not a spell to be cast nor a potion to be brewed. It is a recognition, a moment when magic itself looks upon two souls and declares them one. This bond, once forged, cannot be broken by any force known to wizard kind. It transcends distance, time, and even death itself." Hermione's breath caught. "Transcends death. Harry, do you know what that means?" "That we're stuck with each other forever," Harry offered, trying to lighten the mood. But his voice was strained, and the bond pulsed with shared anxiety. "More than that." Hermione's fingers drummed against the table, a nervous habit he'd come to recognize over the past year. If the bond transcends death, then even if one of us, she stopped, swallowing hard. Even then, the connection would remain. The surviving partner would carry the other with them, always. Harry reached across the table and took her hand. The contact sent a jolt of warmth through him, and the bond flared with golden light. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to figure this out. Together. Hermione squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Together. They had been searching for answers ever since the confrontation with Quirrell at the end of their first year. The battle in the dungeon had confirmed what they already suspected: the bond was powerful, ancient, and connected to the very fabric of Hogwarts itself. But the how and why remained maddeningly elusive. Professor Dumbledore had been helpful, in his cryptic way. He directed them to the restricted section, provided them with a signed note that allowed them access to books that would have been forbidden to ordinary students. But even he seemed to be holding something back, his twinkling eyes revealing nothing of what he truly knew. "Maybe we're looking in the wrong place," Harry said, pulling his hand back to turn another page. "The bond is connected to Hogwarts, right? The Founder's magic is woven into the castle itself. Maybe we should be looking at the history of the school instead of just magical theory." Hermione's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant. The Founders created the bond, or at least discovered it. If we can find records from their time, we might learn how it was originally understood and used." They spent the rest of the afternoon digging through the library's extensive collection of historical texts. The sun had dipped below the horizon by the time Hermione let out a triumphant cry. "Harry! Look at this!" She shoved a heavy tome toward him, her finger pressed against a faded illustration. Harry leaned in, his heart racing. The image showed 4 figures, 3 men and a woman, standing in a circle, their hands clasped, golden light emanating from their joined palms. "The Founders," Hermione breathed. "Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. They're performing a bonding ritual." Harry studied the image, his eyes tracing the lines of golden light. "They're all connected. Not just pairs, the 4 of them together." "The bond can be shared," Hermione said slowly. "It's not just between 2 people. It can be expanded to include more, though it becomes weaker the more it's diluted. But the Founders were all connected, which is why Hogwarts itself is so magical. They poured their combined power into the castle's foundations." Harry felt the bond pulse with sudden understanding. So Hogwarts is basically a giant magical construct powered by the Founders' bond. That's why it responds to us. We're connected to the same kind of magic. Exactly. Hermione beamed at him, and Harry felt a surge of warmth that was entirely his own. The bond isn't just between us, it's connected to everything the Founders built. The castle, the grounds, even some of the ancient spells that are still in use today. They pored over the book for hours, discovering more about the bond's history. It had been known by many names over the centuries: the Covenant of Magic, the Soul's Recognition, the Golden Thread. But the most common term was simply Magic's Choice, a reference to the belief that the bond was formed by magic itself, not by any conscious decision of the witches and wizards involved. "There have only been a handful of bonded pairs throughout history," Hermione said, her voice tinged with awe. "The Founders were the first. Obviously. Then there were the Peverell brothers. They were bonded, which is why they were able to create the Deathly Hallows. And then," she stopped, her eyes widening. "Then there's this." She pushed another book toward him, this one older and more fragile than the others. Harry handled it with extreme care, opening the cracked leather cover to reveal page after page of names and dates. "The bonded," Hermione explained. "Someone kept a record of every bonded pair that ever existed. Look at the dates, Harry. There are centuries between some of them." Harry scanned the list, his eyes widening. The names were accompanied by brief descriptions of their accomplishments. There was a pair who had single-handedly stopped a goblin rebellion. Another pair who had discovered a new branch of magical theory. A pair who had created a protection spell that was still in use today. "Powerful witches and wizards," Harry murmured. "Every single one of them." "Because the bond amplifies their magic," Hermione said. "But look at the last entry. Harry looked. The final name on the list was his own, Harry Potter, alongside Hermione Granger. The entry was recent, written in a hand he didn't recognize, and it was followed by a single line of text that made his blood run cold. The bonded pair of the new millennium. Destined to face the darkness that threatens to consume the wizarding world. Theirs is the power that will either save us all or doom us to eternal shadow. Harry closed the book with a snap, his hands trembling. What does that mean? Doom us to eternal shadow? I don't know, Hermione admitted. But I think it means that the bond is a double-edged sword. If we fail, if we let the darkness corrupt us, the consequences will be catastrophic. They sat in silence, the weight of the revelation pressing down on them. Outside, the last of the summer light had faded, leaving the common room bathed in the warm glow of the fire. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this, Harry said. Quietly. Maybe it's too dangerous. We're just kids, Hermione. How are we supposed to save anyone? We're not just kids, Hermione said fiercely. We're bonded. We're stronger together than we would be apart. And if we don't face the darkness, who will? Harry looked at her, her determined expression, her unwavering faith in him and in their connection, and felt the bond pulse with warmth and certainty. You're right, he said. We can't run from this. We have to face it. Together. Hermione smiled, and the bond flared with golden light. Together. The start of the new term brought fresh challenges. Harry and Hermione returned to Hogwarts with a new purpose, not just to learn, but to prepare. They spent every spare moment in the library, researching the bond and its history, practicing spells that would strengthen their connection and amplify their power. Their friends noticed the change. Ron, in particular, was suspicious. You two are always whispering together, he complained one evening as they sat in the common room. And what's with all the books? You've got enough reading material to sink a ship. We're just studying, Hermione said, her voice carefully neutral. There's a lot to learn. Studying what? Ron pressed. You've been acting weird ever since last year. The troll, the Dementor, the whole Quirrell thing, you never told me what really happened. Harry and Hermione exchanged a glance. They hadn't told anyone about the bond, not even Ron. Dumbledore had advised them to keep it secret, to protect themselves and the people around them. It's complicated, Harry said finally. We'll tell you when we can. But for now, you need to trust us. Ron looked hurt, but he nodded. Fine. But I'm here if you need me. Both of you. Thanks, Ron, Hermione said softly. We appreciate it. The bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry felt a surge of gratitude for his friend. Ron might not understand what was going on, but he was loyal, and that counted for more than Harry could express. Their second year brought new dangers. The Chamber of Secrets had been opened, and students were being petrified left and right. Harry and Hermione found themselves at the center of the mystery, their bond pulsing with warnings that they couldn't quite interpret. I don't understand, Hermione said, frustration evident in her voice. We've searched everywhere. The library, the restricted section, even the forbidden forest. But we can't find any information about the chamber. Harry reached out through the bond, trying to sense what she was feeling. There was fear, yes, but also determination. Hermione wasn't going to give up, no matter how impossible the task seemed. Maybe the bond can help us find it, Harry suggested. The chamber is connected to Slytherin's magic, right? And the Founder's magic is connected to the bond. Maybe if we focus on it, we can sense where it is. Hermione's eyes widened. That's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? Because you've been too busy reading, Harry said, a smile tugging at his lips. Hermione swatted his arm, but she was smiling too. All right. Let's try it. They sat in the middle of the common room, cross-legged, facing each other. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Harry closed his eyes and reached for the bond, feeling Hermione's presence like a warm light in his chest. Focus on Slytherin, Hermione murmured. On his magic, his legacy. Let the bond guide us. Harry did as she said. He thought about Slytherin, the dark, ambitious founder who had wanted to keep magic pure. He thought about the chamber, hidden somewhere beneath the castle, waiting to be opened. And he felt the bond pulsing, pulling him toward something. Under the castle, Harry breathed. It's under the castle. Near the dungeons. I see it too, Hermione said, her voice filled with wonder. The bond is showing us the way. They opened their eyes, and Harry felt a surge of triumph. They'd found it. Not through research or exploration, but through the bond itself. We should tell Dumbledore, Hermione said. He'll know what to do. Not yet, Harry said. We need to investigate first. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Hermione hesitated. The bond is warning me. It's telling me that there's danger ahead. I know, Harry said. But we're stronger together. We can face it. They found the entrance to the chamber the next day, hidden behind a sink in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Harry felt the bond pulse with warning as they descended into the darkness, but he didn't stop. Hermione was beside him, her hand in his, and together, they were unstoppable. Here, Harry said, stopping in front of a massive stone wall covered in serpents. This is the entrance. Hermione examined the wall, her brow furrowed. How do we open it? Parseltongue, Harry said, and the word came out of him as a hiss that felt both foreign and natural. The wall split open, revealing a dark tunnel that stretched into the unknown. Hermione stared at him. You can speak Parseltongue. I didn't know I could, Harry admitted. It just happened. The bond pulsed with unease, and Harry felt Hermione's fear mingling with his own. But they didn't stop. They descended into the tunnel, their wands raised, the bond flaring with golden light. The chamber was vast, its ceiling supported by massive pillars carved with serpents. At the far end, a giant statue of Salazar Slytherin loomed, its stone eyes seeming to watch them as they approached. This is incredible, Hermione breathed. This is where he built his legacy. Where he tried to keep his bloodline pure. It's also where he hid the basilisk, Harry said grimly. The monster that's been petrifying students. Hermione's face went pale. How do you know it's a basilisk? The bond showed me, Harry said. It's connected to Slytherin's magic. I can see it when I focus. Before Hermione could respond, a massive shape erupted from the water behind them. The basilisk rose from the depths, its scales gleaming in the dim light, its venomous gaze fixed on them. Don't look at its eyes. Harry shouted. Close your eyes. But it was too late. Hermione had already caught a glimpse of the basilisk's gaze, and she was frozen, her body turning to stone before Harry's horrified eyes. Hermione! Harry screamed. The bond pulsed with agony, and Harry felt Hermione's consciousness slipping away. He could sense her fear, her desperation, her love for him. Stay with me, he thought desperately. Stay with me, Hermione. Please. The basilisk lunged, and Harry threw himself out of the way, his wand raised. He could feel the bond weakening, Hermione's presence fading, and he knew that if he didn't act fast, she would be lost forever. Expecto Patronum, he shouted, pouring everything he had into the spell. The golden stag burst from his wand, blazing with light. It charged at the basilisk, forcing it back, and Harry used the distraction to reach Hermione's side. Please, he begged, pressing his hand to her face. Please don't leave me. The bond flared with golden light, and Harry felt Hermione's magic surging to meet his. Together, they created a shield of pure golden energy that enveloped Hermione's body, protecting her from the basilisk's gaze. Hold on, Harry thought desperately. Just hold on. The basilisk lunged again, and Harry felt a flash of inspiration. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the sword of Gryffindor, which had appeared there moments before. He didn't know how it had gotten there, the bond, perhaps, or some ancient magic, but he didn't question it. He raised the sword and plunged it into the basilisk's skull. The monster fell with a deafening crash, and Harry collapsed beside Hermione, his body spent. It's over, he breathed. The basilisk is dead. The bond pulsed with Hermione's relief, her gratitude, and Harry felt her consciousness returning to her body. Her eyes fluttered open, and she smiled weakly. "You saved me," she whispered. "We saved each other," Harry corrected. "The bond, it's what kept you alive." It was stronger than the basilisk's gaze. Hermione reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the scar on his forehead. "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me," Harry said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're bonded. We'll always save each other." The bond pulsed with golden light, and Harry felt something shift. Their connection had deepened again, becoming something more powerful, more intimate. "Together," Hermione said. "Together," Harry agreed. They sat in the darkness, their hands clasped, the bond pulsing between them like a second heartbeat. And Harry knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The aftermath of the chamber incident was chaotic. Dumbledore was exonerated, Lucius Malfoy was exposed, and Harry discovered that he was the true heir of Gryffindor, a revelation that made him feel both proud and deeply unsettled. But through it all, the bond remained steady, a constant source of strength and comfort. "The bond is getting stronger," Hermione said one evening as they sat in the hospital wing, recovering from their ordeal. "I can feel it changing. It's like it's growing." "Growing into what?" Harry asked. "I don't know." Hermione's voice was quiet, uncertain. "But I think we need to learn more about it. The founders were bonded, but there were others too. The record we found listed dozens of pairs throughout history. We need to understand why the bond chooses certain people and not others." Harry nodded. "We'll find out. Together." The search for answers led them to a hidden corner of the library, where a dusty book sat unopened on a high shelf. Hermione had found it by accident, her fingers brushing against its worn spine as she reached for another volume. "Look at this," she said, pulling the book down. "It's a history of magical bonds. I've never seen it before." Harry leaned in, his eyes scanning the faded title. "The Secret History of the Ancient Covenant." They opened the book together, their hands touching, the bond flaring with golden light. The pages were filled with names and dates, stories of bonded pairs who had shaped the course of wizarding history. "There were more than I thought," Harry said, his voice hushed. "Dozens of pairs, going back centuries." "Because they kept it secret," Hermione said. "Every pair kept their connection hidden. They knew that the bond could be exploited, used against them. So they hid their identities and their power." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. "And we're supposed to be the same. Hide what we are for the rest of our lives." Hermione hesitated. "Maybe. Or maybe we're supposed to change things. The bond is powerful, Harry. If we use it openly, we could transform the wizarding world. Or destroy it," Harry said grimly. "The record we found mentioned that too. Doom us to eternal shadow." "We can't let that happen," Hermione said fiercely. "We have to make sure that the bond is used for good, not for evil. That's our responsibility." Harry nodded slowly. "Then we need to learn everything we can. About the bond, about its history, about how it works. We can't afford to make mistakes." They spent the rest of the night reading, their bond pulsing with shared curiosity and determination. The book detailed the lives of dozens of bonded pairs, their triumphs and tragedies, their victories and defeats. "The Peverell brothers were bonded," Hermione read aloud. "That's how they were able to create the Deathly Hallows. Their combined power allowed them to achieve what no single wizard could." "There's a pattern," Harry said slowly. "Every bonded pair in this book is connected to something important. The founders, the Peverells, all of them. They weren't just powerful, they were destined. Chosen by magic itself for a specific purpose." Hermione looked up, her eyes wide. "So we're not just bonded. We're bonded for a reason. The magic chose us to do something." "But what?" Harry asked. "What are we supposed to do?" "I don't know," Hermione admitted. "But I think we're going to find out. Soon." The years passed, and Harry and Hermione grew closer. The bond deepened with every shared experience, every triumph and tragedy, every moment of joy and sorrow. They became inseparable, their minds and hearts intertwined in ways that no one else could understand. But the darkness was growing too. Voldemort had returned, his power spreading like a cancer through the wizarding world. The war was coming, and Harry and Hermione knew that they would be at its center. "We need to prepare," Harry said one evening, his voice grim. "Voldemort is getting stronger. He'll come for us eventually. Then we'll be ready," Hermione said firmly. "We've been training for years. Our magic is stronger than ever, and the bond is at full strength." "Full strength?" Harry asked. "I've been reading about it," Hermione explained. "The bond matures over time. The closer we are, the more powerful it becomes. And we've been together for years now. I think it's reached its peak." Harry felt the bond pulse with warmth, and he knew she was right. The golden thread between them was thicker than ever, a constant presence in the back of his mind. "Then let's make sure we use it well," he said. "When Voldemort comes, we'll be ready." The war came faster than anyone expected. Voldemort's forces attacked Hogwarts, and Harry and Hermione found themselves at the heart of the battle. They fought side by side, their magic synchronizing in ways that left their enemies reeling. "The bond is singing," Hermione said as they fought. "It's never been this strong." "I know," Harry said. "I can feel it too. We're unstoppable when we're together." They were winning. The Death Eaters were falling back, their dark magic no match for the golden light that poured from Harry and Hermione's joined wands. But Voldemort himself was still out there, waiting. "He's coming," Harry said, his voice cold. "I can feel him." "Then we'll face him," Hermione said firmly. "Together." The bond flared with golden light, and Harry felt something shift. Their connection had reached its zenith, becoming something more powerful than he could have imagined. "Stay with me," he said. "Always," Hermione promised. Voldemort appeared in a flash of green light, his serpentine face twisted in rage. He raised his wand, and the battle began. But Harry and Hermione were ready. Their magic surged forth, golden and blazing, and they attacked with a fury that surprised even themselves. The battle was fierce, but the bond was stronger. Harry felt Hermione's magic flowing through him, amplifying his own, and together, they were unstoppable. Voldemort screamed as the golden light engulfed him, his dark magic dissolving like morning mist. He tried to fight back, but he was no match for the combined power of the bond. "No," he shrieked. "No. I will not be defeated." But he was. The golden light consumed him, and he was gone, reduced to ash and shadow. Harry collapsed to his knees, his body spent. Hermione was beside him, her hand in his, the bond pulsing with warmth. "We did it," she breathed. "We beat him." "Together," Harry said. "Together," Hermione agreed. They sat in the ruins of the castle, their hands clasped, the bond pulsing gently between them. The war was over, and they had won. But Harry knew that their journey wasn't over. The bond was too important, too powerful, to be hidden any longer. The wizarding world needed to know what they were, what they could do. "We need to tell them," he said. "About the bond. About what we are." Hermione nodded. "I know. But we need to be careful. The bond is powerful, but it can also be dangerous. We need to make sure that people understand it, that they don't fear it." "We'll tell them together," Harry said. "Just like everything else." The bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry felt a sense of peace settle over him. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew that he and Hermione would face it together. Because that was what the bond was, not just magic, but love. Unconditional, unwavering, eternal love. And that was more powerful than any dark magic Voldemort could have conjured. The revelation changed everything. The wizarding world was shocked to learn about the bond, but they were also awed. Harry and Hermione were celebrated as heroes, the saviors of the wizarding world. But they didn't let the fame go to their heads. They knew that the bond was a responsibility, not just a gift. And they were determined to use it for good. "We should start a school," Hermione said one evening. "Teach people about the bond. About how it works, how it can be used for good." Harry nodded. "That's a brilliant idea. We can train the next generation of bonded witches and wizards. Help them understand their power." They worked together to create a new institution, a place where bonded pairs could learn to control their power, to use it for the benefit of all. It was a difficult undertaking, but they were determined to see it through. And through it all, the bond remained strong, a constant source of strength and comfort. "I love you," Harry said one night, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Hermione smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "I love you too. Always." The bond pulsed with golden light, and Harry felt a sense of peace settle over him. They had come so far, faced so many challenges, and they had always come through together. And that was the most important thing of all. Not the power, not the fame, but the love that had brought them together. Love that would last forever. The new institution was a success. Harry and Hermione trained dozens of bonded pairs, teaching them to harness their power and use it for good. The wizarding world began to change, to become more open and accepting of the ancient magic that had been hidden for so long. "The bond has changed everything," Hermione said one evening as they looked out over the castle grounds. "The wizarding world will never be the same." "And that's a good thing," Harry said. "We've made a difference. We've made things better." Hermione leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "We did it together." "Together," Harry agreed. The bond pulsed with golden light, and Harry felt a sense of peace settle over him. They had faced the darkness and won. They had found each other and forged a bond that would never be broken. And that was the greatest magic of all. Chapter 4, The Power of Two. The rain fell in sheets against the windows of Grimmauld Place, turning the grimy glass into rippling curtains of grey. Harry stood at the window of the drawing room, his reflection a ghostly double superimposed over the dark street below. His scar ached, a dull, persistent throb that had become his constant companion over the past few months. But beneath the pain, beneath the weight of the war that pressed down on his shoulders like a physical burden, the bond pulsed with steady warmth. Hermione was in the library, her presence a golden thread that connected them across the narrow corridors of the ancient house. He could feel her frustration. She'd been searching for hours through the Black family's collection of dark artifacts, trying to find something, anything, that might help them destroy Voldemort's Horcruxes. "Harry." Her voice echoed in his mind, a whisper that was both thought and feeling. "Come here. I found something." He left the window, his footsteps echoing on the worn floorboards. The house was quiet, too quiet, the silence broken only by the occasional creak of old wood and the distant muttering of Mrs. Black's portrait. The other members of the order had gone out on various missions, leaving Harry, Hermione, and Ron alone with their research. The library was a disaster of books and scrolls, papers scattered across every available surface. Hermione sat in the center of the chaos, a massive tome open on her lap, her eyes bright with excitement. "Look at this," she said, gesturing at the page. "It's a journal from one of the bonded pairs we read about. Isadora and Aldrich Thorne. They were bonded during the 14th century, and they documented everything." Harry pulled up a chair beside her, his shoulder brushing against hers. The contact sent a jolt of warmth through him, and the bond flared with shared anticipation. "What does it say?" he asked. Hermione traced her finger along the faded script. "They discovered something remarkable. The bond between magical partners isn't just about amplifying each other's power, it's about creating something new. When two bonded witches or wizards work together, their magic doesn't just combine. It transforms. Transforms into what? Something greater than the sum of its parts." Hermione looked up at him, her eyes shining. "They called it synchronized magic. It's not just casting spells together, it's weaving your magic together so completely that it becomes a single, unified force. And when that happens, you can achieve things that no individual wizard could ever accomplish." Harry thought about the Patronus they'd cast together, the golden stag that had been so much more powerful than anything he could have done alone. "Is that what we've been doing?" "Partly," Hermione said. But we've only scratched the surface. According to the Thorns, true synchronized magic requires complete trust, absolute unity of purpose. You have to let go of your individuality and become part of something larger. That sounds terrifying, Harry admitted. It is, Hermione agreed. But it's also necessary. If we're going to defeat Voldemort, we need to unlock the full potential of the bond. We can't hold anything back. Harry looked at her, her earnest expression, her unwavering determination, and felt the bond pulse with warmth and certainty. Then we'll do it, he said. Together. Hermione smiled, and the bond flared with golden light. The days that followed were filled with practice. Harry and Hermione retreated to the basement of Grimmauld Place, a dusty space that had once been used for dark rituals. They cleared away the detritus of the Black family's legacy and transformed the room into a training ground. Synchronized magic requires perfect harmony, Hermione said, pacing in front of him. Our thoughts, our intentions, our magic, everything needs to be aligned. How do we do that? Harry asked. Hermione stopped pacing and faced him. We need to practice sharing our magic. Not just casting spells together, but actually merging our cores. Letting our magic flow between us like a current. Harry felt a flutter of nervousness. Is that safe? I don't know, Hermione admitted. But the Thorns Journal says it's the only way to achieve true synchronization. We have to be willing to take the risk. Harry took a deep breath. Then let's do it. They faced each other, their hands clasped, their eyes locked. The bond pulsed between them, warm and steady. Close your eyes, Hermione murmured. Focus on the bond. Feel it pulsing inside you. Harry did as she said. The bond was a golden thread in his chest, connecting him to Hermione's presence. He could feel her heartbeat, her breathing, the rhythm of her magic flowing beneath her skin. Now, Hermione said, let your magic flow toward me. Don't push it, just let it happen naturally. Harry felt his magic responding to her request. It rose from his core like a tide, moving toward the bond, toward Hermione. He could feel her magic rising to meet his, their energies intertwining like the threads of a tapestry. And then, something shifted. The bond flared with golden light, and Harry felt his consciousness expanding, merging with Hermione's. He could feel her thoughts. Her emotions, her memories. He could feel her love for him, her fear of losing him, her determination to protect him. Harry, she thought, and her voice echoed inside his mind. I can feel you. I can feel you too, he thought back. This is amazing, she finished. I've never felt anything like it. They stood in perfect stillness, their magic flowing between them like a river of gold. The world around them faded away, leaving only the bond, warm, powerful, eternal. We need to practice this, Hermione said, her voice echoing in his mind. We need to learn to sustain this state. To use it in battle. Harry nodded, but he didn't want to let go. The connection between them was so beautiful, so perfect, that he wanted to stay in it forever. But he knew she was right. They had a war to win. They practiced every day, pushing the boundaries of their connection. They learned to share their magic without breaking the bond, to synchronize their thoughts and intentions in perfect harmony. They cast spells together, their voices blending into a single chant, their magic weaving into patterns that left them breathless with wonder. The Thorns were right, Hermione said one evening, her voice filled with awe. This is more powerful than anything I could have imagined. We're not just two witches and wizards anymore, we're something new. Harry felt it too. The bond had transformed them, forging them into a single entity with two bodies. They could sense each other's presence across any distance, share each other's thoughts and emotions, amplify each other's magic to heights that would have been impossible alone. We're ready, he said. When Voldemort comes, we'll be ready. The attack came 3 weeks later. Harry had been dreaming, nightmares of the graveyard, of Cedric's body, of the green flash of the killing curse. He woke with a gasp, the bond pulsing with Hermione's alarm. Harry. Her voice echoed in his mind. They're here. The Death Eaters, they've found us. He was out of bed in an instant, his wand in his hand. The house was already shaking, the sound of explosions echoing through the corridors. Hermione was running toward him, her face pale but determined. "We need to get everyone out," she said. "Ron, Ginny, the others, they're in the drawing room." Harry grabbed her hand, and together, they ran. The bond pulsed between them, warm and steady, filling them with strength. The drawing room was chaos. The Order members were fighting, their spells lighting up the darkness. Death Eaters were everywhere, their masks gleaming in the firelight. Harry. Sirius was there, his face bloodied but his eyes blazing. "Get Hermione out of here. You need to go." "No." Harry shouted. "We're not leaving. We're fighting." Sirius opened his mouth to argue, but a curse slammed into him, sending him crashing against the wall. Harry screamed, the bond flaring with rage and grief. "No." Hermione grabbed his arm. "Harry, we need to focus. We can't help him if we're not in control." Harry took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. She was right. He couldn't let his emotions control him, not now. "Together," he said. "Together," she agreed. They raised their wands, their magic synchronizing in perfect harmony. The golden light that erupted from their joined spell was blinding, a wave of pure energy that swept through the room. Death Eaters were thrown back, their masks shattering, their screams echoing off the walls. "Synchronized magic," Hermione breathed. "It's working." Harry didn't answer, he was too focused on the battle. He could feel Hermione's magic flowing through him, amplifying his own, and together, they were unstoppable. They fought their way through the house, driving the Death Eaters back. But there were too many of them, and Harry could feel the bond beginning to strain under the pressure. "We need help," he gasped. "There are too many of them." Hermione nodded, her face set in grim determination. "Then we need to get everyone out. Create a distraction." Harry understood. He reached for the bond, pouring everything he had into it. Hermione's magic met his, and together, they cast a spell that would change everything. "Protego Maxima," they shouted in unison. The golden shield erupted from their joined wands, expanding outward until it surrounded the entire house. The Death Eaters screamed as the barrier slammed into them, throwing them back, banishing them from the property. "That won't hold them for long," Hermione gasped. "We need to evacuate everyone." They ran through the house, gathering the wounded and the frightened. Harry felt the bond pulsing with Hermione's urgency, her determination to save everyone she could. "The port key," someone shouted. "We need to activate the port key." Harry grabbed Hermione's hand, and together, they reached for the enchanted teapot that was the Order's emergency escape route. "Everyone touch it!" Harry shouted. "Now!" The world spun around them, and then they were gone. They landed in the middle of a field, the grass wet with rain, the sky dark with clouds. Harry collapsed to his knees, his body spent, the bond pulsing with exhaustion. "Is everyone all right?" Hermione asked, her voice strained. "Is anyone hurt?" They were all accounted for, Ron, Ginny, Sirius, the other members of the Order. But Harry could see the fear in their eyes, the uncertainty. "We need to regroup," Sirius said grimly. "The safe house is compromised. We need to find somewhere else." Harry looked at Hermione, and the bond pulsed with shared understanding. "We know somewhere," he said. "Somewhere they won't find us." The castle of the Ancient Covenant was hidden deep in the Scottish Highlands, protected by layers of enchantments that had been woven by the founders themselves. Harry and Hermione had discovered it in their research, a hidden sanctuary that had been used by bonded pairs for centuries. "It's perfect," Hermione said as they explored the castle's halls. "It's connected to the same magic that powers Hogwarts. The bond will be even stronger here." Harry nodded, but he was distracted. The vision of Sirius being thrown against the wall kept replaying in his mind, the fear and rage still pulsing through him. "Harry." Hermione's voice was soft, concerned. "We need to talk about what happened." "I know," he said quietly. I almost lost control. When I saw Sirius fall. Your emotions are stronger because of the bond, Hermione said. When you feel something, I feel it too. And when your emotions spiral out of control, it affects both of us. Harry felt a surge of guilt. I'm sorry. I should have. Don't apologize, Hermione interrupted. We're in this together. But we need to be careful. The bond makes us stronger, but it also makes us more vulnerable. If Voldemort can exploit our emotions, he can use the bond against us. Harry nodded slowly. How do we prevent that? We need to learn to control our emotions, Hermione said. Not suppress them, but channel them. Use them as fuel for our magic instead of letting them consume us. Can we do that? I don't know, Hermione admitted. But we have to try. They spent the next few weeks training in the castle, pushing the bond to its limits. They learned to share their emotions without being overwhelmed by them, to use their fear and rage as sources of power rather than weakness. And slowly, they began to understand the true potential of the bond. Look at this, Hermione said one evening, pointing at a massive mural that covered one of the castle's walls. It's depicting a battle. 2 bonded witches and wizards against an army. Harry studied the image, his eyes tracing the golden light that emanated from the central figures. They're synchronized, he said. Completely merged. Exactly, Hermione said. They're not just working together, they've become one entity. 2 bodies, 1 mind, 1 magic. Harry felt a shiver run down his spine. Is that what we're supposed to do? Hermione hesitated. I think so. The bond is leading us toward this, complete union. But it's dangerous. If we lose ourselves in the merge, we might never come back. Harry looked at her, and the bond pulsed with love and certainty. We won't lose ourselves, he said. We'll always find our way back. Because we'll be together. Hermione smiled, and Harry felt the bond flare with warmth. Together, she agreed. The final battle came sooner than anyone expected. Voldemort's forces attacked the castle of the Ancient Covenant with a fury that shook the very foundations of the fortress. Harry and Hermione stood on the battlements, watching the Death Eaters swarm toward them like a tide of darkness. There are too many of them, Hermione said, her voice steady despite the fear that Harry could feel pulsing through the bond. We can't hold them off with conventional magic. Then we use the bond, Harry said. We synchronize completely. Become the weapon the Founders intended us to be. Hermione looked at him, her eyes shining with tears. If we do this, we might not come back. Harry reached out and took her hand. Then we'll face whatever comes. Together. The bond flared with golden light, and Harry felt the world fade away. There was only Hermione, only their connection, only the love that had grown between them over the years. Ready? He asked. Ready, she replied. They raised their wands, and the magic surged forth. The battle was unlike anything Harry had ever experienced. He wasn't just fighting, he was the fight. Every spell he cast was amplified by Hermione's power, every movement was synchronized with hers. They moved as one, their thoughts intertwined, their magic flowing in perfect harmony. Voldemort's forces fell before them like wheat before a scythe. The golden light of the bond consumed everything in its path, leaving nothing but ash and shadow. Impressive, Voldemort's voice echoed across the battlefield. But not enough. The Dark Lord appeared before them, his serpentine face twisted in rage, his wand raised. The Death Eaters parted around him like water around a stone. Potter, Voldemort hissed. You think your little bond can defeat me? I have transcended death itself. I am immortal. You're nothing, Harry said, and his voice carried the weight of both his and Hermione's power. You're a coward who hides behind dark magic. And we're going to destroy you. Voldemort laughed, a cold, grating sound that sent chills down Harry's spine. You can't destroy me. I have Horcruxes. I have power that you can't even imagine. We don't need to imagine it, Hermione said. We're going to show you what real power looks like. The bond flared with golden light, and Harry felt himself surrendering completely to it. There was no Harry, no Hermione, only the bond, only the love that had brought them together. Expecto Patronum, they shouted in unison. The golden stag burst from their joined wands, enormous and blazing with light. It charged at Voldemort, and the Dark Lord screamed as the light consumed him. "No," he shrieked. "No. I will not be defeated." But he was. The golden stag tore through him like a blade through shadow, and Voldemort dissolved into ash, his body crumbling into nothing. The battle was over. Harry collapsed to his knees, his body spent, the bond pulsing weakly in his chest. Hermione was beside him, her hand in his, her presence a warm light in the darkness. "We did it," she breathed. "We actually did it." "Together," Harry said. "Together," she agreed. The bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry felt something shift. Their connection had reached its peak, becoming something more powerful than he could have imagined. "We're going to be okay," Hermione said, her voice soft. "We're going to be okay." Harry nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I know." They sat in the ruins of the castle, their hands clasped, the bond pulsing gently between them. The war was over, and they had won. But Harry knew that their journey wasn't over. The bond was too important, too powerful, to be hidden any longer. The wizarding world needed to know what they were, what they could do. "We need to tell them," he said. "About the bond. About what we are." Hermione nodded. "I know. But we need to be careful. The bond is powerful, but it can also be dangerous. We need to make sure that people understand it, that they don't fear it." "We'll tell them together," Harry said. "Just like everything else." The bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry felt a sense of peace settle over him. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew that he and Hermione would face it together. Because that was what the bond was, not just magic, but love. Unconditional, unwavering, eternal love. And that was more powerful than any dark magic Voldemort could have conjured. Chapter 5, The Final Union. The dawn broke over the Scottish Highlands like a wound, streaks of crimson and gold bleeding across a sky still heavy with the smoke of battle. Harry stood at the highest tower of the ancient Covenant Castle, his hands gripping the cold stone parapet, watching the sun rise over a world that had been irrevocably changed. The bond pulsed weakly in his chest, a golden thread that had been stretched to its breaking point. Hermione was below, tending to the wounded, her presence a constant warmth at the edge of his consciousness. But even that warmth felt different now, fainter, more distant, as if the battle had taken something essential from them both. "We won," he whispered to the empty sky. "So why does it feel like we lost?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The castle below him was a ruin, walls shattered, towers crumbled, the ancient enchantments that had protected it for centuries flickering like dying candles. The Death Eaters had been defeated, Voldemort had been destroyed, but the cost had been staggering. Harry turned away from the window and made his way down the winding staircase. The corridors were filled with the wounded and the weary, Order members, survivors from the battle, witches and wizards who had come from across the wizarding world to fight against the darkness. They looked at him with a mixture of awe and gratitude, and Harry felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on him like a physical burden. "Harry!" Ron's voice called out from the main hall. "Harry, over here." Harry hurried toward the sound, his heart pounding. Ron was standing over a makeshift bed, his face pale, his hands stained with blood. And on the bed, Sirius. Harry pushed through the crowd, dropping to his knees beside his godfather. Sirius's face was ashen, his breathing shallow, a dark stain spreading across his chest. "Hey, pup," Sirius said weakly, his eyes fluttering open. "You made it." "Sirius, don't talk," Harry said, his voice cracking. "You're going to be fine. We'll get you to a healer." "There's no time," Sirius interrupted. "I can feel it, Harry. This is it." "No." Harry shook his head violently. "No, you can't, I just got you back. I can't lose you again." Sirius reached up with a trembling hand and touched Harry's face. You were never going to lose me, pup. I've always been with you. In here. He pressed his hand to Harry's chest, over his heart. And now you have Hermione. She's your family now. Both of you, you're going to be okay. Harry felt the tears streaming down his face, hot and unstoppable. Sirius, please. It's okay, Sirius said softly. It's okay. I'm ready. I've been ready for a long time. Just promise me one thing. Anything, Harry sobbed. Promise me you'll keep fighting. Not just against the darkness, but for the light. For the people who need you. For the world you're going to build. Harry nodded, unable to speak. Sirius smiled, his eyes closing, and the bond pulsed with a wave of grief so powerful that Harry thought his heart would shatter. Sirius, he whispered. Sirius, please. But it was too late. Sirius's hand fell away from his face, and the light went out of his eyes. Harry screamed. The bond flared with Hermione's presence, her arms wrapping around him from behind, holding him as the grief tore through him like a physical force. I'm here, she whispered. I'm right here. He turned into her embrace, burying his face in her shoulder, letting the tears come. She held him, her hand stroking his back, her magic flowing through the bond to soothe his shattered soul. We're going to be okay, she murmured. We're going to get through this. Together. Harry clung to her, drawing strength from her presence. The bond pulsed with shared grief, shared love, shared determination. I can't do this without you, he said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. You don't have to, she said. We're bonded, remember? We're never alone. Harry pulled back, looking into her eyes. They were red-rimmed, tear-streaked, but there was a fire burning in them that he'd never seen before. A fire that matched the one burning in his own chest. We need to end this, he said, his voice hardening. Voldemort is gone, but his followers are still out there. The Death Eaters, the dark creatures, all of them. We need to make sure they can never rise again. Hermione nodded. I know. And I know how we can do it. She led him away from the chaos, through the winding corridors of the castle, until they reached a hidden chamber that Harry had never seen before. The room was circular, its walls covered in ancient runes that glowed with a faint golden light. In the center of the room, a pedestal rose from the floor, and on top of the pedestal lay a book bound in what appeared to be dragon hide. What is this place? Harry asked, his voice hushed. The Chamber of the Covenant, Hermione said. It's where the founders performed their bonding ritual. The Thorns journal mentioned it, but I didn't think it was real until now. Harry approached the pedestal, his fingers tracing the worn cover of the book. What's in here? The secrets of the bond, Hermione said. Everything the founders knew about synchronized magic, about merging, about the ultimate power that two bonded witches and wizards can achieve. Harry opened the book, and the bond flared with recognition. The words on the page seemed to glow, written in a language that was ancient and yet somehow familiar. It's calling to us, he said. The bond is responding. Hermione stepped closer, her shoulder brushing against his. Read it aloud. I think that's what we're supposed to do. Harry took a deep breath and began to read. The words flowed from his lips like a chant, the ancient language speaking through him as if he'd known it his entire life. When two souls are bound by magic's choice, they become vessels of a power that transcends mortal understanding. To unlock the fullness of this power, they must surrender themselves completely to the bond, their hearts, their minds, their very essence. In that surrender, they find union. In that union, they find strength beyond measure. The golden light in the room intensified, swirling around them like a living thing. Harry felt the bond pulsing, growing, reaching towards something he couldn't quite grasp. Keep reading, Hermione urged, her voice filled with wonder. Don't stop. Harry continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. The final union is not a spell, but a choice. A choice to become something greater than two individuals. A choice to merge your souls into a single being of pure magic and love. This union cannot be undone. It cannot be reversed. It is the ultimate expression of the bond, the culmination of everything the founders sought to create. Harry stopped, his heart pounding. Hermione, this sounds like... It sounds like we're supposed to merge completely, she finished, her voice trembling. Become one being. Two bodies, one soul. Harry looked at her, his eyes searching hers. Are we ready for that? It sounds permanent. It is permanent, Hermione said. But we're already permanent, Harry. The bond has been growing since the moment we met. This is just the next step, the final step. Harry reached out and took her hands. The bond flared with warmth, and he felt her love washing over him like a tidal wave. I don't want to lose myself, he admitted. I don't want to lose who I am. You won't, Hermione said softly. We're not becoming something else, we're becoming more. We're becoming the best versions of ourselves, together. Like the founders. Like all the bonded pairs who came before us. Harry looked into her eyes and saw the truth of her words reflected there. The bond was calling to them, urging them forward, showing them the path that had been laid out for them since the moment they'd met on the Hogwarts Express. Together, he said. Together, she agreed. They closed their eyes, and the golden light consumed them. The merging was unlike anything Harry had ever experienced. He felt his consciousness expanding, reaching out to touch Hermione's. Their thoughts intertwined, their emotions blended, their memories became a shared tapestry of joy and sorrow, love and loss. I can see everything, he thought, and his voice echoed in both their minds. Everything you've ever experienced. Everything you've ever felt. I can see you too, Hermione thought back. The cupboard under the stairs. The Dursleys. The pain of being unloved. And I can see you, Harry thought. Your parents, your childhood, the loneliness of being the only magical person in your family. We were both alone, Hermione thought. But we found each other. We found each other, Harry agreed. Their souls intertwined like the threads of a tapestry, weaving together into something new and beautiful. Harry felt the boundaries between them dissolving, their identities merging into a single entity that was both him and Hermione, yet somehow more than the sum of its parts. I love you, he thought. I've always loved you. I know, Hermione thought back. And I've always loved you too. From the very beginning. The golden light pulsed with warmth, and Harry felt the final barriers between them dissolving. They were one now, two bodies, one soul, a bond that would never be broken. What happens now? He asked. We use our power to heal the world, Hermione thought. To rebuild what was destroyed. To create a future where no one has to suffer the way we suffered. Together, Harry said. Together, Hermione agreed. They opened their eyes, and the world looked different. The golden light of the bond was everywhere, suffusing everything with warmth and beauty. Harry could feel the magic of the castle, the ancient enchantments that had been woven into its stones, and he knew that he could command them now, he and Hermione, together. We're ready, he said, his voice carrying the resonance of two souls speaking as one. Hermione nodded, her eyes shining with golden light. Let's end this. The Death Eaters had gathered at the ruins of Malfoy Manor, their leaderless forces trying to regroup in the aftermath of Voldemort's defeat. They were planning something, a final attack, a desperate bid to reclaim the power that had been stripped from them. But Harry and Hermione were already there. They appeared in the center of the courtyard, their golden light blazing like a second sun. The Death Eaters recoiled, their dark magic no match for the purity of the bond. You can't stop us all, one of them snarled. There are hundreds of us. You're just two people. We're not just two people, Harry said, his voice echoing with Hermione's. We're the bond. We're the power that the founders created. And we're here to end this. The golden light exploded outward, consuming the Death Eaters in a wave of pure, cleansing magic. They screamed as the darkness was burned away from them, their robes crumbling to ash, their wands shattering in their hands. But Harry and Hermione didn't stop. They reached out with the bond, touching the minds of the Death Eaters, showing them the truth of what they'd become. They showed them the pain they'd caused, the lives they'd destroyed, the darkness that had consumed them. And one by one, the Death Eaters broke. They fell to their knees, weeping, begging for forgiveness. The golden light washed over them, healing the wounds in their souls, offering them a chance at redemption. "Please," one of them sobbed. "Please, we're sorry. We didn't know, we didn't understand." "Now you do," Hermione said, her voice gentle but firm. "And now you have a choice. You can continue down the path of darkness, or you can walk toward the light." The Death Eaters looked at each other, their faces streaked with tears. And slowly, reluctantly, they began to lay down their wands. "We choose the light," one of them whispered. "We choose the light." Harry felt the bond pulse with warmth, and he knew that they'd done something remarkable. They hadn't just defeated their enemies, they'd redeemed them. The war was truly over. The weeks that followed were filled with rebuilding. Harry and Hermione worked tirelessly, using the power of the bond to heal the wounded, restore the broken, and rebuild the wizarding world. They traveled across Britain, visiting every magical community, every hidden village, every isolated cottage. They brought hope to the hopeless, healing to the sick, and unity to the divided. "People look at us differently now," Harry said one evening as they sat on the battlements of Hogwarts, looking out at the stars. "They see us as something more than just witches and wizards. They see us as symbols." "Symbols of hope," Hermione said. "Symbols of what the bond can achieve." Harry nodded slowly. "But we're also just us. Harry and Hermione. Two people who fell in love and found something more." Hermione leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "That's what makes it real, Harry. The bond isn't just magic, it's love. And love is the most powerful magic of all." Harry wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. The bond pulsed with warmth, and he felt a sense of peace settle over him. "I love you," he said. "Always." "Always," she agreed. The new Ministry of Magic was established under the leadership of Kingsley Shacklebolt, and Harry and Hermione were offered positions of unprecedented authority. They declined, choosing instead to focus on their work with the bond, teaching the next generation of witches and wizards about the power of magical partnership. "It's important that people understand," Hermione said as they prepared for their first class. "The bond isn't something to be feared. It's something to be embraced." Harry nodded, his eyes shining with pride. "We're going to change the world, Hermione." "I know we are." "I know too," she said, taking his hand. Together. Their bond flared with golden light, and they walked together into the classroom. The first class was filled with witches and wizards from all over the world, young and old, experienced and novice, all eager to learn about the bond. Harry and Hermione taught them about magic's choice, about synchronized spellcasting, about the power that came from complete trust and love. "It's not about finding the perfect partner," Hermione explained. "It's about finding someone who makes you whole. Someone who compliments you, challenges you, and loves you unconditionally. And when you find that person," Harry added, "the bond will choose you. Magic will recognize itself in both of you, and it will bind you together in ways that transcend ordinary understanding." The students listened with rapt attention, their eyes wide with wonder. Harry felt the bond pulse with Hermione's joy, her sense of purpose. "We're making a difference," she said later that evening as they walked through the castle's corridors. "I can feel it." "Me too," Harry agreed. "This is what we were meant to do." The bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry knew that everything was going to be okay. The war was over, the darkness was defeated, and they had built something new in its place. Something beautiful. The years passed, and Harry and Hermione's legend grew. They were celebrated as the greatest magical partners in history, the ones who had defeated Voldemort and ushered in a new era of peace and unity. But they never let the fame go to their heads. They remained humble, dedicated to their work, devoted to each other. And through it all, the bond remained strong, a golden thread that connected them across time and space, a constant reminder of the love that had brought them together. "I still remember the day we met," Hermione said one evening as they sat in the garden of their cottage. "The Hogwarts Express. You were sitting alone in that compartment, looking so lost and lonely. Harry smiled, the memory flooding back to him. And you were so bossy, demanding to know if I'd seen a toad. I was not bossy, Hermione protested, but she was laughing. I was efficient. You were both, Harry said, pulling her close. And I loved you from the moment you sat down across from me. I didn't know it then, but I know it now. Hermione looked up at him, her eyes shining with tears. I loved you too. From the very beginning. The bond pulsed with golden light, and Harry leaned down to kiss her. They were bonded. They were one. And they always would be. Together, he whispered against her lips. Together, she breathed back. The golden thread between them pulsed with warmth, and Harry felt a sense of peace settle over him. The war was over, the darkness was defeated, and they had found something more powerful than any magic. They had found each other. And that was the greatest miracle of all. Chapter 6, A Destiny Fulfilled. The morning light crept through the cottage windows like liquid gold, spilling across the worn floorboards and illuminating the dust motes that danced in the still air. Harry lay in the warmth of the bed, his eyes closed, feeling the steady pulse of the bond against his consciousness. Hermione's presence was a constant warmth beside him, her breathing slow and even, her magic humming in perfect synchrony with his own. 20 years. It had been 20 years since they'd first met on the Hogwarts Express, since magic had looked upon two lonely children and declared them one. 20 years of battles and triumphs, of loss and love, of building something new from the ashes of the old. And yet, the bond felt as fresh and vital as it had on that very first day. Harry opened his eyes and turned his head, watching Hermione sleep. The years had been kind to her, there were lines around her eyes and a few strands of silver in her bushy brown hair, but she was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. The bond pulsed with warmth, and he felt a surge of love so powerful that it took his breath away. Stop staring, Hermione murmured, her eyes still closed. It's creepy. Harry laughed, the sound echoing through the quiet cottage. I wasn't staring. I was admiring. Same thing. Hermione opened her eyes, and the golden light of the bond flickered in their depths. You're incorrigible. And you love me anyway. Always. She reached out and touched his face, her fingers tracing the scar on his forehead. Always. They lay in comfortable silence, the bond pulsing between them like a second heartbeat. Outside, the sounds of the magical world drifted through the open window, the chirping of enchanted birds, the rustle of self-pruning hedges, the distant hum of a flute connection activating somewhere in the village. We should get up, Hermione said finally. We have a big day ahead of us. Harry groaned. Do we have to? Yes. Hermione sat up, her hair a wild tangle around her shoulders. The dedication ceremony is this afternoon. The whole wizarding world will be there. We can't be late. Harry sighed, but he was smiling. Fine. But only because you asked nicely. Hermione swatted his arm, and the bond pulsed with shared amusement. Get dressed. I'll make breakfast. The cottage was small but perfect, a little stone house nestled in the heart of the Scottish Highlands, surrounded by wildflowers and ancient oaks. Harry and Hermione had built it together, using the power of the bond to weave enchantments that made it warm and welcoming, protected from the outside world. The kitchen was their favorite room, filled with the scent of fresh bread and the warmth of the hearth. Hermione moved through it with practiced ease, her magic working alongside her hands to prepare their breakfast. Harry sat at the table, watching her, the bond pulsing with contentment. It still amazed him, after all these years, how complete he felt when she was near. What are you thinking about? Hermione asked, setting a plate of eggs and toast in front of him. Everything, Harry admitted. How far we've come. How different everything is now. Hermione sat down across from him, her eyes soft. It's been quite a journey. That's an understatement. Harry picked up his fork, but he didn't eat. I remember thinking, back in first year, that I'd never survive Hogwarts. That I was too weak, too ordinary to be anything special. You were never ordinary, Hermione said firmly. The Dursleys made you feel that way, but it was never true. I know that now. Harry reached across the table and took her hand. But I didn't know it then. Not until I met you. The bond pulsed with warmth, and Hermione's eyes glistened. We saved each other, Harry. That's what the bond does. It finds two people who need each other and brings them together. Harry squeezed her hand. And now we get to help other people find that same connection. That's what today is all about. Hermione nodded. The dedication of the Academy of Magical Partnership. It's finally happening. Harry felt a surge of pride, mingled with a touch of nervousness. The Academy was their legacy, a school where bonded witches and wizards could learn to harness their power, where magic's choice would be celebrated rather than hidden. It had taken years of work, years of convincing the wizarding world that the bond was something to be embraced, but they'd finally done it. Eat your breakfast, Hermione said, her voice firm. We have a long day ahead of us. Harry smiled and did as he was told. The Academy of Magical Partnership was built on the site of the ancient Covenant Castle, restored and expanded using the power of the bond. Harry and Hermione had worked alongside the finest architects and enchanters in the wizarding world, pouring their magic into every stone, every beam, every carefully woven ward. The dedication ceremony was the largest gathering the wizarding world had seen since the end of the war. Witches and wizards had come from every corner of the globe, their robes a riot of color against the grey Scottish sky. Harry and Hermione stood at the entrance of the main hall, greeting the dignitaries and guests as they arrived. Harry. Hermione. Kingsley Shacklebolt was the first to approach, his hand extended in greeting. This is a magnificent achievement. The wizarding world owes you a debt of gratitude. We were just doing what needed to be done, Harry said, shaking his hand. But thank you, Kingsley. Modest as always. Kingsley smiled, his eyes crinkling. I remember the first time I saw you two fight together. I knew then that you were something special. I just didn't know how special. Hermione smiled, the bond pulsing with shared pride. We've come a long way since then. You certainly have. Kingsley's expression grew serious. I hope you realize what you've created here. This academy, it's going to change everything. Future generations will look back on this day as the moment the wizarding world truly began to heal. Harry felt the weight of those words, and the bond pulsed with shared determination. That's what we're hoping for. Kingsley nodded, then moved on to greet the other guests. Harry and Hermione continued to welcome the arriving dignitaries, their magic reaching out through the bond to touch each person who passed, offering a sense of warmth and welcome. I can't believe how many people came, Hermione murmured as the last of the guests filed into the main hall. Neither can I, Harry admitted. But I'm not surprised. What we're doing here, it's important. People know that. Hermione turned to look at him, her eyes shining with tears. We did this, Harry. We built this. All those years of fighting, of struggling, of never giving up, it was all worth it. Harry reached out and took her hand. It was always worth it. Because it led us here. Together. The bond pulsed with golden light, and Hermione leaned into him, her forehead resting against his shoulder. Together, she whispered. The dedication ceremony was everything they'd hoped for. The main hall of the academy was filled with witches and wizards from every corner of the magical world, their faces alight with hope and wonder. Harry stood at the podium, Hermione beside him, looking out at the crowd. We stand here today, he began, at the threshold of something new. Something that has never been attempted before in the history of our world. We stand here to celebrate the bond, magic's choice, and to honor the witches and wizards who have been chosen by magic to be partners. The crowd murmured in agreement, and Harry felt the bond pulse with Hermione's support. For centuries, he continued, the bond has been hidden. Feared. Misunderstood. Those who were bonded kept their connection secret, afraid of what would happen if others discovered their power. And because of that fear, we lost something precious. We lost the knowledge of what the bond truly is, a gift, a blessing, a source of strength and love. Harry paused, looking out at the sea of faces. He saw Ron in the front row, his arm around his wife, his eyes bright with pride. He saw Neville, his face still bearing the scars of battle, his hand clasped in his wife's. He saw so many familiar faces, so many people who had fought alongside them, who had believed in them when the odds were impossible. "My wife and I were bonded when we were 11 years old," Harry said, and he felt Hermione's hand find his, her presence steady and warm. "We didn't understand it at first. We didn't know what it meant, or where it would lead us. But we knew, even then, that we had found something special. Something that would never break, no matter what." The crowd was silent, listening with rapt attention. "We faced darkness together," Harry continued. "We faced loss, and pain, and fear. There were times when we didn't think we'd survive. But through it all, the bond remained. It held us together when everything else was falling apart. It gave us strength when we had none left of our own." Harry felt the tears welling in his eyes, and he didn't try to stop them. "And now, we stand here to share that gift with all of you. The Academy of Magical Partnership is a place where bonded witches and wizards can learn to harness their power. A place where magic's choice is celebrated, not hidden. A place where the next generation can find the same love, the same strength, the same hope that we found in each other." The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the hall. Harry turned to Hermione, and the bond pulsed with golden light. "Together," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Together," she agreed. The celebrations went on long into the night. There was food and music, dancing and laughter, a joyous outpouring of hope and unity that Harry had never experienced before. He and Hermione moved through the crowd, greeting old friends, making new ones, their bond pulsing with shared joy. "Harry!" Ron's voice cut through the noise, and Harry turned to see his oldest friend approaching, his face flushed with happiness. "Mate, that speech was brilliant. I was nearly in tears." "Thanks, Ron," Harry said, pulling him into a hug. "I meant every word." "I know you did." Ron pulled back, his eyes serious. "You and Hermione, you've done something incredible. The whole wizarding world is going to be different because of you." "Because of all of us," Hermione interjected, her arm slipping around Harry's waist. "We couldn't have done it without our friends. Without you." Ron's face flushed. "Ah, well. You know. I did what I could." "You did more than that," Harry said firmly. "You were there for us when we needed you most. You never gave up on us, even when things were at their darkest." Ron's eyes grew bright with unshed tears. "You're my best mates. Both of you. I'd do anything for you." The bond pulsed with warmth, and Harry felt a surge of love for his friend, a love that was both his and Hermione's, shared and amplified by the bond. "We love you, Ron," Hermione said softly. "You know that, right?" Ron blinked rapidly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Yeah, I know. I love you too. Both of you." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the bond pulsing between them. Then Ron cleared his throat, his expression brightening. "Come on," he said. "I've got a bottle of fire whiskey with my name on it. Let's celebrate properly." Harry laughed, and the bond pulsed with shared mirth. "Lead the way." The night wore on, and the celebrations grew wilder. Harry and Hermione danced together, their bodies moving in perfect synchrony, the bond pulsing with shared joy and love. "I never thought we'd make it here," Hermione admitted as they swayed to the music. "There were so many times when everything seemed hopeless. When I thought we'd never survive." Harry pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her. "But we did survive. And now we're here. Together." Hermione looked up at him, her eyes shining with golden light. "Because of the bond. Because of you. Because of us," Harry corrected. "We did this together. Every step of the way." The bond pulsed with golden light, and Hermione leaned up to kiss him. The crowd around them faded away, leaving only the two of them, their magic intertwined, their souls united. "I love you," Hermione whispered against his lips. "I've loved you since the moment we met. And I'll love you until the end of time." Harry felt the tears streaming down his face, and he didn't try to stop them. I love you too. Always. The bond flared with golden light, and Harry felt something shift. Their connection had reached its zenith, becoming something more powerful than he could have imagined. They were truly one now, two bodies, one soul, a bond that would never be broken. Whatever comes next, Hermione said, her voice soft and certain, we'll face it together. Together, Harry agreed. The years that followed were filled with growth and change. The Academy of Magical Partnership flourished, attracting students from all over the world. Harry and Hermione taught there together, sharing their knowledge and experience with the next generation of bonded witches and wizards. They watched as their students found their own magical partners, formed their own bonds, and created their own legacies. They saw the wizarding world heal, the divisions of the past slowly fading as the bond became more widely understood and accepted. The world is changing, Hermione said one evening as they sat on the porch of their cottage, looking out at the stars. And we helped change it. Not just us, Harry said. Everyone who believed in us. Everyone who fought alongside us. Everyone who refused to give up hope. Hermione nodded, her hand finding his. I still remember that first day on the Hogwarts Express. You were so shy, so unsure of yourself. I could feel your loneliness even before I sat down. And you were so bossy, Harry said, grinning. Demanding to know if I'd seen a toad. Hermione laughed, the sound carrying through the quiet night. I was not bossy. I was efficient. Same thing. She swatted his arm, but she was laughing. You're incorrigible. And you love me anyway. Always. They sat in comfortable silence, the bond pulsing between them. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and eternal, bearing witness to a love that had defied the darkness and emerged triumphant. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met? Harry asked suddenly. If the bond hadn't chosen us? Hermione was silent for a long moment. I think about it sometimes. And I always come to the same conclusion. We were always going to meet, Harry. The bond chose us because we were meant to be together. It was destiny. Harry nodded slowly. I used to hate that word. Destiny. It felt like something that was forced on me, something I couldn't escape. But now I understand. Destiny isn't about being forced to do something, it's about being led to something. And I was led to you. Hermione turned to look at him, her eyes shining with golden light. And I was led to you. We were led to each other. The bond pulsed with golden light, and Harry felt a sense of peace settle over him. They had come so far, faced so many challenges, and they had always come through together. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. For everything. For being my partner, my friend, my love. For never giving up on me. Hermione reached out and touched his face, her fingers tracing the scar on his forehead. Thank you for being mine. For never letting me go. I couldn't let you go, Harry said. The bond wouldn't let me. I know, Hermione said softly. That's what makes it so beautiful. They sat in silence, the bond pulsing between them, and Harry knew that everything was exactly as it should be. The darkness was gone, the war was over, and they had built something new in its place. Something beautiful. Something eternal. The dedication of the new wing of the Academy was held on a bright summer day, the sun shining down on the assembled crowd. Harry and Hermione stood at the podium, their hands clasped, the bond pulsing with shared pride and joy. Today, Harry began, we open the doors of the Hall of the Covenant, a place where witches and wizards from all over the world can come to learn about the bond, to celebrate magic's choice, and to find the strength and hope that we found in each other. The crowd applauded, their faces alight with hope and wonder. This hall is dedicated to all the bonded pairs who came before us, Hermione continued. To the founders, who first discovered the power of the bond. To the Peverils, who used their bond to create the Deathly Hallows. To the Thorns, who documented the secrets of synchronized magic. And to all the others, whose names have been lost to history, but whose legacy lives on in every bonded pair that exists today. Harry felt the bond pulse with warmth, and he squeezed Hermione's hand. "And it's dedicated to the future," he said. "To all the witches and wizards who will find their magical partners, who will form bonds of their own, who will carry on the legacy of love and power that we've worked so hard to build." The crowd cheered, and Harry felt tears streaming down his face. Hermione was beside him, her hand in his, her presence a warm light in his soul. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." "Together," Harry said. "Together," she agreed. They cut the ribbon together, their magic synchronizing as they did, and the doors of the Hall of the Covenant swung open, revealing a space filled with golden light. That night, after the celebrations had ended and the guests had departed, Harry and Hermione stood on the highest tower of the Academy, looking out at the stars. "Everything's different now," Harry said. "The world is different." "Different is good," Hermione said. "Different means we're moving forward. We're healing." Harry nodded slowly. "I used to be so afraid, you know. Of the future. Of what was coming. I never thought I'd make it past 17, let alone all the way here." Hermione leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "And now? Now I'm not afraid anymore. Because I know that whatever comes, we'll face it together." The bond pulsed with golden light, and Hermione looked up at him, her eyes shining with love. "That's the most beautiful thing you've ever said." Harry smiled, pulling her closer. "I mean every word." They stood in silence, the bond pulsing between them, and Harry felt a sense of peace settle over him. They had faced the darkness and won. They had found each other and forged a bond that would never be broken. And they had built something new from the ashes of the old. Something beautiful. Something eternal. "Let's go home," Hermione said softly. Harry nodded, and together, they walked down from the tower, their hands clasped, their magic intertwined, their love a golden light that would shine forever. The years passed, and Harry and Hermione's legend grew. They became known as the greatest magical partners in history, the ones who had defeated Voldemort and ushered in a new era of peace and unity. Their bond became a symbol of hope, a reminder that love could conquer even the deepest darkness. But they never let the fame go to their heads. They remained humble, dedicated to their work, devoted to each other. And through it all, the bond remained strong, a golden thread that connected them across time and space, a constant reminder of the love that had brought them together. On the 50th anniversary of their first meeting on the Hogwarts Express, Harry and Hermione returned to the place where it all began. The train was still running, still carrying students to Hogwarts, still filled with the magic and wonder that had defined their youth. They found an empty compartment and sat down, their hands clasped, the bond pulsing with shared memories. "Can you believe it's been 50 years? Hermione asked. "No," Harry admitted. "It feels like yesterday. And it also feels like a lifetime." Hermione smiled, her eyes shining with golden light. "We've had quite a journey." "We have." Harry squeezed her hand. "And I'd do it all over again. Every moment. Every struggle. Every triumph. As long as I got to do it with you." Hermione's eyes glistened with tears. "I feel the same way. From the moment we met, I knew you were special. I didn't know why, but I knew. And now you know. Now I know." Hermione leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "We were meant to be together, Harry. That's what the bond means. Magic chose us, and we chose each other." The bond pulsed with golden light, and Harry felt a sense of peace settle over him. "Together," he said. "Together," she agreed. The train whistle blew, and the Hogwarts Express pulled away from the station, carrying them toward a future that was still unwritten. But Harry didn't fear the future. Not anymore. Because he had Hermione. And she had him. And together, they would face whatever came next. The golden thread between them pulsed with eternal light, a testament to the power of love, the strength of unity, and the magic that had chosen them. They were bonded. They were one. And they always would be. The end.